excited for it.
Okay, I'm down with it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Well, I am very excited to have with me today the founder of RivalFlow AI as well as SpyFu, Mike Roberts. How you doing this morning, Mike?
I can't be better, Patrick.
Oh, that's fine.
This is our first one together in like a kind of a while. It's pretty fun.
It's been a minute, maybe since startup sufferings, honestly.
Yeah.
So we're going to start here with some questions that people are asking us pretty frequently. And the big one, the elephant in the room is Google okay with AI generated content?
Sure.
Are people going to get penalized? Like what's your take on that?
This is kind of like our biggest like the question that people ask in like sales calls and so on is Google okay with AI generated content? And they've explicitly said, Search Liaison says that they're okay with AI generated content. Like the idea is to be helpful to customers, right? So if people have questions and you're answering that question, then you're creating helpful content, and that's in line with Google's, core mission to organize the world's content, right? And what that means from like kind of like a basic perspective is if you do a search and they deliver you a result and you go to that result, does your question get answered, or do you have to come back to the SERP and do another search, right? So if your content is comprehensive and it's answering their question, regardless of whether that comes from a database or a person or like, some kind of like software like that answers the question for you or AI, it doesn't matter. The core goal is to solve that problem, that root question that the user has. If you satisfy it, then Google's doing their job, you're doing your job, the customer's being served, and all of that in the long run and generally in the short run is rewarded by Google, because that's their founding mission, and it's been what they've been driving towards for as long as I've been paying attention, which is actually like 17, 18 years at this point, which is kind of crazy. But yeah.
I mean, you have seen a whole bunch of different algorithm changes, a whole bunch of updates throughout the decades now, we can say. And do you feel like this is the same thing? This one that happened in March seemed like a big thing, and it really seemed like they were using the word spammy a lot in that content brief or in that update brief. Do you want to elaborate on kind of if and how this aligns with history, or what ways things are changing?
I mean, honestly, if you look at the SERP, the state of the SERP these days, it's kind of not great. Like maybe something of a low point from where we've been looking. Like Google is a bit less, kind of considerably less usable in terms of answering those questions than it has been. And there are a variety of reasons that could be happening. Arguably, there's some black box stuff going on where you have a whole lot of machine learning that you can't diagnose what the output's going to be from the input, and Google's leaned into that over the last. This is just a new thing that's come out in the last few days on Twitter, and actually it started in Reddit, where there's a search engineer talking about like kind of maybe some of the root causes for some of Google's SERP woes, right? But let's say this, right? You've been here at this company for 14 years, right? And you've seen the cycles of penalties and like optimizations, and you've seen sort of the cycles of like SEO hacks and SEO tricks, right? And at SpyFu, we've seen those things, and we've always been like, I've personally always been like, the first rule of building like an SEO workflow and then like selling it to customers is first do no harm, right? I'm never personally like like going to put somebody in a position where some number of years down the road, 2 years or 6 months or 5 years, that the rankings are going to tank. Like, to me, that's like the opposite of our number one core value, which is create value in people's lives, right? Like, so watching how Google is trying to like eliminate bad content, spammy content. You think of it, oh, we're trying to get rid of these things. But what are they driving towards, right? The ultimate goal is what I was just talking about, delivering you to the piece of content or even the experience overall, right? In some cases, that's not the piece of content. When you start typing into Google, weather, it answers your question off the SERP. It answers your question in the suggest box, right? SEOs hate this, like weather sites are like, this is terrible. I get it. Like, yes, it sucks if you're in that position, right? You're delivering, but we've been, but going back to what's actually works is, if you think about it, the anxiety about whether AI is okay. What are we delivering when you're doing the weather thing and you're going to the weather site? You're ultimately going to a place where it's not human generated content. That's actually content generated by freaking thermometers.
Yeah.
Put it into a database and then delivered to customers. Like, how is that? Like, everything's gonna be fine from this AI generated content perspective, as long as we follow that North Star of creating value for the customers and answering their questions. So spam and like link farms, or just like all of the crap that's in the SERP right now, going away. Okay, it's been a bad time for people, right? I'm not saying that all the things that are getting penalized are bad, but there's been quite a bit of misuse of AI, right? Early AI, GPT-3, GPT 3.5, just spamming it and doing like kind of crappy things that, if you follow the North Star of creating value for people, it won't be bad. I'll tell you an example. There was somebody built a site that I saw that was like about measurements, like how long is a foot? It was like a question that people ask on Google. How long is a foot? Yeah, like, because you want to know how long a foot is, like in bananas or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, how long is a foot in pencils, and how long is a foot in thumbs? Cool. That's interesting. But if you use AI to generate stuff, AI is fundamentally enumerate. It's highly literate, like incredibly literate, and almost gives this illusion of being super smart, but it's not numerate yet, right? Like LLMs are not numerate. And so it would be like, a foot is 38 bananas or whatever. And you're like, sometimes it would get it right. Like when they had clearly looked it up in the database and like sort of seeded it with some content, it was right. But then it was wildly off. And so you're like, this is clearly garbage. Like, this is clearly like misleading and weird that it actually ranks,
Yeah.
Weird that it ranks. And that's the fundamental problem in a weird way, right? Is because, I'm sorry, Patrick, I'm going so long on these things, but I'm real passionate about it.
Great. I love it.
Because the thing is that what's great and what's bad and what's cool and what's different, what's changing, is that Google's now using their own LLMs, large language models like GPT, to grade, to judge your content, like the helpful content update, and the helpful content, whether we're talking about the update or the overall concept, right, that Google's pursuing, and in a way they've been pursuing forever, is that they're using LLMs, their own LLMs, to grade and judge and basically be kind of like a human grader of content. Well, where do LLMs fall short? It's in this numeracy stuff, right? So like, it'll look at this content and be like, oh, cool, what a fundamentally interesting piece of content that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's telling you how many bananas a foot is.
Yeah.
Great, you know, like how
38.
many bottles of wine are in the ocean, you know, like, oh, fantastic, but it's wrong. It's
Yeah.
not estimating right, you know, it's doing a bad job. So so Google's trying to catch up with that, not just the numeracy thing,
Mhm.
but a bunch of other elements. Do you want me to continue? Because I totally will.
I
Check
mean,
this,
absolutely. You're on a
check this
roll. Like
out.
keep it
Who's
going.
the big winner when content is 100x? The big winner isn't the big winner is the entity that's organizing the world's content, right? So I think you're gonna eventually want to ask me, is SEO dead, right?
You know, I was getting to that. So let
You'll
me
ask me later. We'll go
yeah,
into it
okay,
later.
all right,
But
yeah.
look, I'm gonna tell you now that the reality is that if content, high quality content, and answers like how many, I mean, if they could get it right, how many bananas are in a foot, or how many widths of a tape, you know, is in a foot, would be useful, right? Because I actually always need to know how to estimate a foot using things like that aren't a ruler. Like the width of my hand is useful, um, but if I could literally know that like this particular pencil is 7.25 inches or something, and actually there's like n number in a yard, I could like use this thing. It would be kind of a useful thing to know,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, but for humans to just randomly generate that content, it's like not super, or maybe it is. But anyway, the point is that if the cost of building content goes down, and therefore the amount of content and the detail of content increases, the organizer of that content, meaning Google, stands to win, and ultimately will win once they kind of catch up to the organization. Right now, in this burst of innovation that we've seen, in this burst of content ideation and creation, um, they are behind the curve, and so you see that borne out in the SERP. But you know, with that sort of mound of new information, there's like an organization. Sorry, sorry about that. We'll have to add. Anyway, there's this mound of information that we all have because we can produce more content now for less, right? So we
Mhm.
ultimately have content that we continuously need to improve, and thus you have the new venture, RivalFlow, and you have our first SEO workflow that will never actually ruin your life as our first principle. But of course, it also, as the shirt shows, moves you up into the right.
Up and to the right. So
Mhm.
it sounds like what you're saying is Google is okay with AI generated content, but you just have to be specific. It's an interesting divide that I'm seeing online. Like some people are like, they're losing their ranks. This update just crushed them. I've seen the sentiment of Google has too much power, which I can feel, but at the same time, we're working inside of Google. Of course they have the power,
Mhm.
but then I see a lot of people. I mean, within our own company, and hearing you, and then hearing other experts that have been in this field for a long time. It's like it's not that much different. It really isn't that much different. And so some of the fear that's happening is also some of the constant fear that happens with Google. We've felt it for forever. Um, and this is just almost like a new example of it. Now, AI is a huge new thing. Um, but do you have any more detailed thoughts on that?
I feel like there's this period here. I think that, like I said, Google is going to catch up, but I think that there's a period here where they are leveraging other signals um, that aren't necessarily their longest term signals, right? And what I mean by that
Yeah.
is they're sort of leveraging the trust of a brand or the intent of a piece of content. There's this relatively famous social media post, relatively famous, I don't know, so famous inside of the maybe the SEO community or whatever, where you have this guy who was a travel blogger, or had like a travel site, right? And he literally traveled to places and gave his actual reviews, and then took his own pictures, and then would use an affiliate link to drive traffic or something, to like a tour or whatever, a tour operator.
Mhm.
And so Google like tanked him. We don't really know why. It's possible that if we dug in, it might be that some of the content on his site wasn't as helpful as the piece of content that he's talking about. Because remember, there is this sort of site-wide algorithm. I'm not saying that that's what happened, but that what the people that wound up outranking him it was like lower quality content. Empirically, you look at it and you're like, this isn't really this person's real experience. This is like somebody talking hypothetically about having visited this place. But what's kind of crazy is that they were using pictures of like his wife. They like actually, that blog took his pictures and like leveraged his pictures in their article. And he's like, they're literally using my wife's, they're literally using my wife. Right. And so like the virality of that is pretty high. But what that entity was like a first party tour operator. Right. So they were actually selling a product or service or whatever, whereas he was an affiliate. And so the thesis was, at least his thesis was that, man, like, I know that I'm a third party, but my content here is better. So we may have a little bit of that stuff going on. I don't think that that's long term. Like, you see the case where another sort of famous one is somebody's like, hey, there's this there's a travel blog. There's a travel blog that you should probably dig these things up, so we're actually linking to the people that actually mention these things.
All right. Yeah.
There's a travel blog that's doing super well given the latest update, and they link to it, and of course it's Google. It's like, so Google's been doing better in terms of like the number of organic results that they have in the SERP related to travel since this update. Okay, so they're trusting their own stuff because they're having trouble determining what's the right piece of content. So they're like, well, we have the source of truth on this, so we're gonna. I do think that they understand and recognize that they have an issue currently in the SERP quality, and so when we're seeing these relatively drastic changes, we've seen these kinds of things before. 100%.
Yeah.
It's when they empirically have bad SERPs, and they're making bigger moves than normal to figure it out, right? We used to have this, I mean, like cataclysmic penguin and panda stuff, right? Like big deals, big problems, big SEO reflexes, and in this case, I personally think that they're getting some of the things wrong, but they're making safe moves from their perspectives rather than necessarily I have a hunch that they're making good long-term changes, but they're sort of making these relatively quick tactical changes where they're delivering more traffic to like stuff that they have confidence in, because it's like the first party for them, like, it's like, this is our data, it's probably fine. And okay, so arguably that's also a case where Google has been pattern wise, to the extent that they can just in-house stuff, they have done that over the long haul, right? Over a very long period of time. Like data, pure data has become commoditized on Google. You can't have a website that ranks on, I mean, it's weird to me that dictionary stuff still exists, but there's a little bit of nuance in there, isn't there? Actually,
Yeah.
but so I want to use that as an example. But weather is commoditized on there. There's a whole list of for whatever reason, slipping my mind right now. There's a whole bunch of things that you would search Google, and everything comes up as sort of knowledge graph stuff. All that stuff, travel, bookings, local listings, maps, all this stuff. Hypothetically, there used to be MapQuest, Patrick. That used to exist. There's nothing that's map related or near me or anything like that is rankable anymore realistically. Like I mean, go for it, but
Well, speaking of that, I'm going a little off script here, but there's plenty of things that you just said that spark some things. And like a new tactic is to really aim for the snippet, really, for stuff that hasn't already been, I don't know if cannibalized by Google is the right term right there, but stuff that they decided, oh, this is ours now, and we're just sorry. But stuff that you could get, where you used to be able to get the #1 rank, and that was your goal. Now the goal is to get that snippet, and have your. Do you think that's a valid strategy? Or do you think that people are just kind of grasping at straws? Still, I don't even know if this is a term anymore. Still want to do white hat SEO, and that's a strategy that they can employ. What are your thoughts and feelings about that?
I mean, particularly if what, like, if you're like answering a specific question, having that question called out in your content is actually pretty smart. Like that'll get you, especially, when you're thinking about like a piece of content, sometimes your piece of content isn't like answering a question exactly. But if you take a step back, right, and you look at that piece of content that you have, and you say, what is the core question that it's answering? Putting that into your content as, like some kind of an H tag or whatever is a pretty smart move. Obviously there's schema stuff where you can try to target the snippets. There's a variety of intents, right? Every snippet type is a different intent. So you really have to like look at the SERP that you're targeting, because you may rank on a bunch of things, but you got to figure out whether or not you're in range on what's the keyword that you're in range on, meaning, and in range I mean like you're not position 75, right? Like, so you're on the first page or you're near the first page, and then if there's something with a snippet, I think you reverse engineer your way into it. You like kind of back into it. Do you do it from the start? I think not. I think you build a piece of content, post it, see how it ranks, and if you're in range, then you back your way into the snippet. That's what I think. But there's all kinds of things on the SERP, right, Patrick? Like videos, like you want to, if there's a main topic for you, you want to own the whole SERP, the social, the video, everything on there, the reviews, like everything on a like a very high level keyword. That's not snippet stuff, but that's owning the SERP. So,
Yeah, and I'm glad you elaborated into that, because it was kind of a leading question. There are so many SERP changes. Just the way it looks now is so different, and functions now is so different than it was, 5, 10 years ago. It's not even close to the same. And like a year ago, it's, we had video carousels and snippets and quick answers and all that stuff. But like it seems like that is the new Google, and it seems like we might just be seeing the beginning of it.
It's so funny, like, when you've been watching this stuff for as long as I have and as long as you have, like I remember 10 years ago being on stage and talking about stuff referencing things like 5 years ago, and I'd lost the entire audience, because really in like our industry, you know, like people start paying attention to like the SERP. And so like we're talking about like 10, you know, like 10 blue links on a page, and everyone's like, what? How old are you? So hey guys, listen, that's how it used to be, you know. There used to be Alta Vista as well. But I mean, yeah, that's the evolution, right? The evolution is, you know, and we've talked about it like in a minute ago, is Google's sort of, you know, it's not just a search index. It's like a knowledge graph married with like other products that they have, you know, like, you know, maps and YouTube and like all the things that Google has, like crap load of stuff, right? I mean, no doubt you're gonna be able to like get a car, right? Like gonna Waymo you in, you know, it's like, you know, like the whole thing is like this conglomeration of multiple different apps. You can book travel through Google. You can book a hotel directly through Google. You can probably find a job, or like, you know what I mean? Like they've got all the things, all the databases that you can imagine. And why wouldn't they just acquire common searched things and then specialize those results? It kind of makes sense if you had $100 billion to, you would probably do the same thing. You want to keep people in your ecosystem. I mean, we do the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, like it's what if you're following the North Star of answering the user's question in the best way that you possibly can, I actually think that doing a search for a flight from, like, let's say Phoenix to San Diego. Okay, I know how to do that, right? I fly to San Diego pretty often, but like, let's say I want to fly to Denver. I was thinking, show me the best flights. Somebody's going to show it to me. I'm already there. I
Yeah.
actually kind of think that the Google results are pretty good most of the time, and I almost never go to like Kayak or whatever you would go to. I'm definitely not going to Expedia. Like, no offense, Expedia, if you're listening, I don't care. I'm just basically not going to go there to book a flight. I don't know where I'm supposed to go to book a flight. I mean, I'll book the flight on the actual website, because then you put in your frequent flyer miles. But to discover the flight that I need to do, I'm pretty much gonna search. And that's not really a search engine job, is it? But it is. But it
It is
is.
now.
It is. Yeah. And we all hate it when it happens, especially if you're a travel site, especially if you're like Kayak. You hate it. It's stupid. You're really mad and you feel betrayed. And I 100% understand. I've feel betrayed by Google before, but not from SpyFu's perspective, just Google Analytics. Throwing out.
We got GA4. That's
No, that's what I mean.
yeah, I know that's what you mean.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's just like a hot take.
Mhm.
In the history of software, upgrades, releases, I think this might be the worst one I honestly, I like Google, but man, that GA4 really is a kick in the nuts.
Yeah.
Oh God, I feel so incredibly hurt. Incredibly hurt. So much.
Yeah.
I really thought that they would get it right eventually. And I kind of have defended them.
You have.
I've I like the direction that they went, but then the default settings, just 2 months of retention, never actually getting back around to fixing the obvious glaring weaknesses in the product. I give people a chance when they try, when they do a new release. I'm like, oh, fine, you know, it's a new one, they're gonna get better. And now they're turning off everybody's old stuff and making you download it. It's just like, I can't believe it. I'm so sad. It's I don't know why I had to go here. It just
Oh,
makes me, I like, you know, I don't know. It's like I can't understand the strategy, and I honestly don't think that there's a worse product release actually in the history of. I don't think that there's a worse product release. Like I'm looking back at like Windows Home, or like
NT, Windows NT, maybe
no, like Windows ME. You know, is that bad? Is that
ME.
worse? I don't really think so. Like we went from Windows 98 to Windows ME, and everyone's like, "That's a pile of turds." It was like it was a pile of turds because Windows 98 was also bad, and then they maybe made it like slightly better. But there's like, I don't think that there's. I don't know of a broader reaching. Okay, I'll say this in marketing
Mhm.
or in sort of like entrepreneur land or website ownership stuff. I don't think that there's ever been a worse release or a worse betrayal of a massive audience for no good reason. I mean, I get the privacy angle that they may be trying to do, but like, wow, people depended on that, and no, and you know, and like, I'm gonna say that only 15% of people probably realize what they actually have lost because they just upgraded and haven't really looked. But when they go back and look and realize that they only have 2 months of data and all of the rest of it is gone forever.
Yeah.
It's deleted. It's not even like accessible. It's gone
Yeah.
forever. Your whole business has lost all of the history. If you haven't been paying attention, 60 days ago is all you've got left. Nothing else is there. Whatever.
It's funny to hear you because it's really funny because you do love Google. You have based multiple companies around your love of Google. And even here when everyone else is afraid and is like Google's going too far with, with basically taking over everything, and we'll elaborate on that in the next question, but and you have defended, as long as I've known you, you've defended Google and their decisions, and we're buddies with them at trade shows. To hear you tear GA apart like this is brand new.
Let me
Is
bright side
brand
this
new.
for you. Let me bright side this for you, okay?
Okay,
Because
let's hear.
actually, if you push the data
Mm-hmm.
into BigQuery and ignore the fact that GA exists, just turn on the BigQuery push
Mm-hmm.
and then start like writing queries. Don't even write queries yourself. Just use ChatGPT. It'll write the queries for you. Hot tip. Just ask it what you want and it'll write the queries. And then step by step it and then push it into Looker, which is also free. You can actually, it's like 100 times better than old GA and a million times better than GA4. So it's like, because you can also push data into it and then you can do your own sort of like analysis. I mean, it's freaking great. If you, I mean, like, this is, I feel like I'm bipolar. This is something that that prior to GA4, you would have had to like be a analytics 360 customer or whatever, right? Like, so like this ability to push into GA to BigQuery, like if you don't do it now, right? Just do it, because I guarantee you, if you haven't looked at your GA4 like deeply, like yeah, it looks like it's doing stuff's going in, but if you haven't like really tried to solve a problem with your business, you won't be able to solve anything in GA4 ever. It's done. It's a dead product. But BigQuery is freaking fantastic. It's better than anything. You can go in and you can make a Looker Studio thing and just build out like the perfect analytics for you, or pay somebody else to do it or whatever. But dude, it's a actual fundamental game changer. Like, and it's like the only thing that prevents the whole dumpster fire thing from being like this incredible mess. But you got 10 million Google Analytics customers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say less than 1% are pumping their data into BigQuery, right? And of course, you can get around the retention issues because like the maximum retention in GA4 is like 14 months. So like, good luck like comparing something that happened 2 years ago, or like finding like you got like a seasonal issue and then you just notice it like 16 months later instead of within the 14-month window. Like you're super screwed. Like you're screwed for forever because you can't do anything about that. And you have to turn the BigQuery because it's like planting a tree, because you can't bring in the GA4 data retroactively. So you just have to go in, change that setting, click that button in post. If you're going to use this video, I don't even care if you do, but if you use this video, make sure that you show this setting, because you need to go in, click the button to start pumping it in. Then you need to go and make sure that you put in like a credit card into BigQuery. It doesn't cost hardly anything to keep the BigQuery data around, most likely. It's like probably like 10 cents a month or something, right? But you're going to have to put in a credit card just to increase your retention beyond 60 days, because they're crazy. Because they're crazy with their 60 days. They just don't care. They're like, 60 days, that's good enough for everyone. Why would you want to take longer than 60 days? That should be plenty. You don't want to look at anything quarterly. Who does that? In business.
Who works in quarters anymore?
Oh, years don't matter.
So
only months, only 60 days.
So just for step, do you export your GA4 data and then import that into BigQuery? I've never used BigQuery, so as a brand new noob,
you just push the button and then it starts pumping it live into BigQuery.
okay.
It's a native integration. It's a single checkbox, and it just happens.
Oh wow!
But it's not on by default. I mean, technically, you have to create a Google Cloud Console account, but like honestly, you get like $500 in free credits just for signing up. Like, I feel like I'm like selling it, but like, but you do. And I don't think I've ever been billed. And like, I mean, we pump a lot of data into it, actually, all of the SpyFu data and all of the RivalFlow data. And I honestly think like it's maybe cost me, well, it's cost me $0, but like, I think it might wind up costing me like $1.10 a month or something like that, or maybe it's inconsequential, very, very inconsequential, and deeply. It's really the solution. Okay, here's the solution for most people. You have implemented GA. You've implemented GA4. Because that's like what happens by default, or that's like what they told you to do, and so you did it, or whatever. I'm telling you with absolute certainty that it's a trash pile and they're not improving it, and it's going to screw you over in the short term and in the long term. The way to get around that is to turn on BigQuery and start pumping the data in. You can at least save the data there. And check this out. There's like third parties like Mixpanel that let you pull the data in from BigQuery. So that you can't pull the data in from GA, right? So you can't like migrate directly into like another analytics platform that you're eventually going to need to move to. You are going to need to move to like another, GA's dead. It's never coming back. If you have to move someplace else in order to do something, whether or not you're going to like run queries yourself, well, like, I'm capable of doing that. Not everybody is. If you need to move, you need to still push it into BigQuery so that you don't have to start over after your implementation. This will allow you to migrate your data into another provider. Mixpanel is one of them. There's more than one of them, but you'll eventually need to do that. There's no way around it. Like, it's not good enough for anything. It's not good enough for anything. And no business ever can actually use it for anything. Nope, nothing.
Well, we're gonna get you your affiliate link for BigQuery because when this video comes out, it's like shining.
I've heard mixed panel's good. We also haven't migrated yet either. I've been able to get plenty, pretty good stuff from BigQuery, but I mean, it's kind of on my docket of things to do.
Mhm.
Move to a new provider.
So let's talk talk a little bit about RivalFlow, but let's do our top level question, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Let's do the
let
top level question.
let's let's get to that. So, um, and that's basically the question everyone's asking right now. You know, with all of this new stuff that's happening, and including, I guess, GA4. You have been an SEO and you have been, you know, with this for a long time, and people everywhere again are saying SEO is dead. That's the big fear. And there's a lot of varying opinions about it. You seem optimistic. Do you think SEO is dead?
I don't think that SEO is dead. Absolutely not. I think that it's definitely changing. And like I said, like the big winner when you've got AI generated content and like you can basically produce really high quality stuff in concert, in tandem with GPTs, with LLMs, like you can sort of like get some really deep insights. I'll give you some hot tips about how to like use these things really well. But like you can produce really high quality stuff relatively inexpensively. So who's the big winner in all that, right? It's the organizer of the world's information. It's Google, it may be Bing, it might be a different search engine, right? It may not be the case that Google wins. I think that they are well positioned to win in the long run because I think that like they've built a gigantic enterprise around organizing content. And I think that we're in this place where we have rapid innovation and rapid ideation and rapid content creation very fast. Like it's dizzying for most people, including us, right? But Google will adapt, right? They'll learn to index this stuff and surface the best pieces of content. And I'll tell you this. Let's just think about it like this, right? It's called when you just type in like a single question into ChatGPT or something, that's called zero shotting it, right? So you're basically trying to just get back whatever the answer is. And if you go to your ChatGPT on your phone or wherever you're doing it, and just type something in, like a random Google question, a question that you would query, or ideally something that's not a very long question. It doesn't matter. It's still called a zero shot. What you get back is some randomization of, you know, like GPT's best stab at it. If you do that exact same thing again, and if you do that exact same thing like 100 times, and you could select, if you read them all, there is a difference. There's one that's better than the other ones, right? They're not all the same because it doesn't produce the same output every time you answer the same question. So if you grade those outputs and maybe add to them, then it's going to be better than the zero shot, statistically speaking, at least, right? So we are the world. We are the world. We produce content. And what we do is we do this sort of combination of zero shotting into GPT and looking at it and being like, no, I want this, give me some more or whatever, right? Like we don't zero shot. We actually curate and leverage the GPT to produce a better shot than the first one, right? And we're not the only ones. There's 100 or 1,000 other people trying to answer the same questions using the same tools. And Google it has the benefit of just being able to be like, I'll pick the best one. What job would you rather have, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a great job. Yeah. So
Oh my God,
they
yeah.
wind up being the big winner.
Mhm.
And in that sense, we are also the winner because Google's generative AI at the top is just doing that zero shot, right?
Mhm.
We're doing the 1,000 shots or curated whatever. We're making a better piece of content than what the LLM just dumps out,
Mhm.
you know? And part of that is leveraging sort of the gap analysis, like what RivalFlow provides, right? Well, what questions are the people answering that are outranking our content? And so we can just continuously get better. Google doesn't have that. They can't just they can't just SGE that or whatever. Sorry, they can't just generatively, you know, dump out the best piece of content.
Mhm.
They kind of can, right? If they leverage their own index, right? But then they're leveraging their own index. They're leveraging us, right? Which is good because it means SEO is still. Are you are you guys familiar with a reg? A reg, retrieval augmented uh, uh, generative AI, right? So a reg is like you're retrieving the content. So you're doing a search first. You're search engineing. You're using a search engine. You're taking like the top end results, and then you're like using those things as your source of truth
Uh-huh.
for your generated output. That's what a reg is. So Google is rapidly evolving into a massive rag, right? A massive rag. And so and they're going to that's how things like that's basically the way, right?
Mhm.
That's the future of search for sure. I mean, it's the present of search, but we're kind of at the very beginning of it. And it's gonna be pretty good. It's gonna be good.
I mean, it sounds like it's fantastic for the searcher. Like that's the thing, is like it is being optimized for the searcher, for all of us who have questions,
Yeah.
for all of us who thirst for knowledge, for whatever that knowledge might be. You know, knowing you and working for SpyFu and RivalFlow, it really seems like our position has always been like Google is going to be the big winner, or whoever, like you said, whoever controls the world's information is going to be the big winner. This is how us normal people, you know, the peasants can navigate that and actually get a place at the table. That's kind of been our backing, you know, with SpyFu, empowering the little guy,
Huh. Yeah,
leveling the
yeah,
playing
yeah.
field,
Absolutely, yes.
and we're continuing that now, and we're optimistic. We're feeling great about it because we're continuing that mission. Like, can you articulate kind of like your spirit behind that? You know, your
Yeah,
core
yeah,
values behind that, and
yeah,
how
yeah.
you're putting it into action.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Sorry. That's absolutely my favorite thing about all of this is that with RivalFlow, like we're kind of answering this core problem that everyone's running into always, you know? It's like the fundamental problem of SEO, which is, well, why is my glorious piece of content, why is my competitor beating me? Like mine is the best, you know? Like it came from my heart and my soul. I wrote it, I crafted it. It really truly is, in my opinion, the best. And why is my annoying like competitor beating me?
Mhm.
Why does Google think that their page is better, right? And that's like this crushing, like deflating problem because you sometimes don't get to know, right? It's like, oh, it's the robot is, and then the software dorks over at Google are just, you know, making up AI things to the reasons that my legitimately better content is, you know, is getting tanked for. And so what RivalFlow does is it like sort of leverages that same technology, right? The same LLMs that are grading your content, and it says, why is their content better? What questions are they answering that you're not? And what questions are they answering more thoroughly? And then we, of course, give you the generated content to plug in there, but that's not the real value. The real value is giving you those answers. And in those answers is like dignity and empowerment, right? Suddenly you're going from this place where you're like, I don't know. I'm like basically like in this place where I could do all this analysis, but I still don't really know what the freaking machine is thinking. And so suddenly we have actions, right? We're going from a place of being like, I don't know. And I guess I'll just move on. And maybe, you know, like it's like a tiny bit of professional shame when you get beat, you know?
Mhm.
To the extent where you don't really want to talk to people about it that badly. So look, here's the answers. Here's why we think and why Google probably thinks that your page is getting beat. Now, it doesn't solve 100% of the problems, right? Because keep in mind, there are other reasons why you might not, why your competitor might be beating you. It might be like a trust issue, you know, trust issues, you know, it might be an issue with like your parents or something, you know, I don't know. Like, no, I mean, like it might be that they have a stronger brand or like their domain has more authority, or maybe that their content overall is more helpful or whatever. It might be that you're an affiliate site and they're like providing the product or service, and that they may be using that as a signal, and that may be really something that we can't overcome for you. But what we can say is, here's the gaps in your content. Here's the things where they're more thorough. Here's the questions that they're answering that you're not. And so if you fill those gaps and you're, you know, then and it doesn't work for some reason, I mean, you can at least isolate that variable, right? Like, because you're kind of looking at it like, is it my content?
Yeah.
I think it's great. I put a lot of work into it. Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of empowerment there. It makes me really proud to be delivering that kind of value and that kind of actionability, because frankly, it was really difficult for me. I've thought for 10 years about trying to build a workflow, and everything has like this kind of, it's either really hard technically, you know, you have to have a lot of knowledge, or it's kind of like it could tank you, right? So it's either hard, or it could tank you, or it doesn't really produce much results, right? Like, oh, I can give you a workflow to just like make sure that you're updating your
Ones and
just like make sure that you have like the proper meta tags or something, you know, like things that people do in, if you've ever used an SEO tool, it's like, here's all the problems with your website. It's like, you know, like it's cool, go through and do all these things, but there's like a lot of them that are like not even used since like 2005, right? In like a lot of auditing tools. So I want to give you the things that actually matter, that are going to have an impact, right? That don't require a weird amount of like technical HTML developer knowledge, and that aren't going to, you know, basically screw you over 2, 3, 5, 10 years from now.
and I think that's interesting with RivalFlow specifically, is that SpyFu is, in contrast with SpyFu is a broad product. We cover a lot of things in there.
Mm-hmm.
RivalFlow is mostly like, you know, you can do a content audit and we'll teach you about meta tags, we'll teach you about H1s, but you can't find one that's just like, hey, the black box likes this and you're missing this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, look, Patrick, that you know this, but not everybody does. Before there was SpyFu, there was no way to like type in a website and see all the keywords that they rank on, or see like what they're advertising on, and you know, that just didn't exist. Fundamentally, there was no SEMrush or Ahrefs or any of these products. nothing was there. So SpyFu and like what we did at the core at that moment, it felt very actionable, right? Like it's like, oh, suddenly I can see what my competitors are doing. This was literally why I built it, like for myself. Like I was like, I had like the fundamental problem that people do in describing my current software product. I described it as web data extraction, which is not how people actually search for it. They'd search for it like with web scraping. That's like web scraping, web scraping products, etc. So like, I didn't realize that because I was a super huge nerd, and so I wanted to figure out if there was anything that I hadn't thought of, and so that's why I built SpyFu and SpyFu's predecessor GoogSpy, and but taking that data and moving it to a point where it's actionable has been something that we've been working on with SpyFu, trying to get it there. But generally, you know, the nature of the product is like mostly about research and not so much about action. And that's a fun thing to work on if you're a data nerd like I am. But over time, sort of developed quite a bit more empathy for the customers. And ultimately, I learned that a product that gives you actions, like there's like this hierarchy of like, what should a product do, right? Especially a data product. Should it give you information? Information is useful. Opinions are better than information. Yeah, it's kind of like opinions is like an insight. And so then the best thing that it can possibly give you is an action, right? And so I wanted to build RivalFlow to be purely actionable. And realistically, we've been trying to move SpyFu. A lot of things in SpyFu have become more and more actionable over time. But it's hard to do that sort of like action at scale, right? Like you have to with SpyFu, you have to build everything for everybody, meaning all websites in the entire world, you know. And with RivalFlow, it's like you put in your website, and we're going to give you the actions that you should take for your website, for each piece, for each page, very tightly focused on improving existing content. You know, it's like, here's a problem. I think it's the biggest, hardest problem to solve. I think it's easier to create a piece of content. I think it'll continue to become easier and easier to produce content in the short and long term, right? These are my opinions. This is the perspective that the product takes. The world likes opinionated products, I think. I really do think that. Like, opinionated products are better products. Surprise, like, who knew? So we have these opinions, the stance in the world. And my position is that improving existing content is the best way to achieve SEO lift, right? You publish something, you see what happens, and if it sticks, if you've got traction, that's the one you double down on. That's like what I've learned as a broad rule, works and has worked for at least 10 years. Like, if you guys remember, like Larry Kim used to be a pretty big speaker in like SEO circles. I mean, actually, the thing is that WordStream was actually a PPC company, but he talked more about SEO than anything. And he talked about these unicorn contents, unicorns versus donkeys, where like the top pieces of your content, like it's a 90-10 rule, a Pareto's principle, right? So like you would have like 90% of your traffic, or 80% or 95%, whatever your numbers are, coming from like your top pieces of content, right? So those, you kind of ignore your donkeys actually and focus on your unicorns, double down on those things. And so in the world of AI and AI generated content and like reduction in cost and, you know, video, it's like we produce faster video, right? Everything's faster, right? More content, better content, all the things. Produce the content, release it, see what works, improve it. That is my opinion on the best way to achieve lift. So we built a product solely focused on that, on starting at that point. You have a website, it has some content. We're going to help you develop all that content and achieve lift in that way. And it freaking kills it. It's the best way. And I mean, like I would have never guessed really that we would have 2 to 3x lift on average on these things, right? Like I would have thought, yeah, 10, 20% lift, but consistent and predictable, and that was my goal. But when we ran it and tested it and we looked at what clients get, it's like way better than I thought. Way wildly outpaces my expectations.
And when you talk about lift, because you talk about lift quite a bit, and just to clarify, are you talking about the lift of a specific piece of content or your SEO presence as a whole?
I'm talking about the lift. So we make recommendations on individual pieces of content. When you do a before and after, like you look at your content before you make the modifications that RivalFlow suggests, and then you look at it after in Google Search Console, what you'll see is a significant RivalFlow shaped jump, right? In your clicks and impressions.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that on the on the RivalFlow homepage. You can see like our results. I'm sure we have some white papers coming. Like we definitely have. The problem is like a lot of our customers are agencies, and so they have, NDAs and stuff like that with their clients. But I know from like calls, like with clients, I know 400% certain with 100% certainty that this actually works in the wild, not just on our stuff, but in the wild.
I'm glad you mentioned agencies because I want to talk kind of about them or to them.
Yeah.
How do you think this can benefit agencies? I've seen you've talked to them and I've seen the enthusiasm. Those are really fun videos to watch. I'm not going to lie. So, why would an agency be interested in this, and how would an agency go about signing up?
So agencies know that like the most efficient, like they know these truths, right? Like the best way to achieve lift is to improve existing content. It's actually kind of a shortcut. But the problem is for them is that it requires the current process is relatively unpredictable, has a bunch of touch points, and fundamentally requires a lot of wisdom, right? Because you've got a page and you don't want to screw it up, right? And sometimes that requires domain knowledge. Sometimes it requires like SEO wisdom, just like you can't just hand it to like an intern or whatever and just be like, do this. You sort of can do that with other processes. So the problem with wisdom, I mean, we've got it, right? But it's expensive. Relatively speaking, wisdom requires suffering or time, like suffering requires time. Like basically wisdom is a derivative of suffering. Like if you've suffered, you have some wisdom. So like that means that you have to be like more experienced, and that means that you cost more, and that type, right? Or you just have to be like, wiser to start from, like maybe smarter or something. Anyway, my point is that it's the surest way to achieve lift, but also like the least predictable process for them that costs the most. So what I mean by the unpredictable aspect of it is that on paper you think, oh, well, it may be only going to cost us like, $100 to improve this piece of content for this person, because like that's the minimum amount of segments of time for each of these 4 people that have to touch it or something, right? But there's like propagation delays, like you have to send it over. All these little things sort of add up to really wind up costing you more money. So we streamline that and make it super predictable. Like our outputs work. You don't have to have wisdom because I mean, it's important to know that the way to make it so that it's important to understand that like the limitations of ChatGPT and LLMs, they hallucinate, right? So we solve that problem, right? We make it so that it doesn't hallucinate because we use the other, like your competitor's content as a source of truth. So it doesn't hallucinate, doesn't make up facts. It just basically says, here's your gaps. And then we generate stuff. We just make sure that question is actually answered in the competitor's content, and then we give you the snippet where it is, so you can source it and make sure that everything's, but we already do that. The GPT doesn't hallucinate. That's how you cause ChatGPT to not hallucinate. Remember what I talked about regs and how Google is becoming a gigantic rag? Well, it's the retrieval augmented generative AI that allows you to not hallucinate. It's how like healthcare and like, you think of like the AI assisted chat. It's looking into your stuff and making sure that it's not going to just like say random things about your company. It says the truth, right? So that's a pretty important thing, Sorry, Patrick. Remind me what the actual topic that what was the question I was answering? Because I I'll ramble, dude.
Yeah, well, it actually brought me to a different question. I think you answered the previous question, but there's obviously a story here. I know how kind of all this started, and the excitement when we found out that it worked, and then the growing excitement of finding out that it works for other people, and then the added excitement of seeing their excitement. It's crazy to go from concept to having other people say that it basically prints money. Do you want to walk through that, and you can include like emotion and the actual situations. Just run us through that story a bit.
Okay, so I remember what we were talking about. Like it was about how this thing works for agencies, and so
Yes. Oh shit.
So I kind of went down a bit of an angle where it's important in our process that we actually answer the question, and don't hallucinate, right? So that's one of the ways that we wind up streamlining that process, because they don't have to. The operator doesn't have to have the wisdom to know whether or not the stuff is what they're writing is correct, because the GPT does it, and we don't hallucinate. So really, all you actually have to be able to do is edit a page, right? If you can copy and paste and then edit, you're good to go. Furthermore, what's great is like when since we launched, we've kind of had the opportunity to really kind of embed and really understand the agency use case, like working with them directly. And so we've built these kind of like really efficient ways to sort of white label and get feedback from customers. Like there's like a button that you click and you just paste, the output completely white labeled into a Google Doc, and then you send that to your client for like comments, right? This is a perfect use case, right? Because you can brand it, you put your like logos on it, and pretend like it was all your analysis, and they can approve it and give you comments and so on, and everything's beautiful. Furthermore, we've got people that are using this really effectively to do like sort of using client presentations, right? So they land clients. Like we just did a what was this, like a customer study, I guess, like a conversation with the marketing team. The marketing team talked to a customer, and they talked about having I think 2 or 3 customers directly, like we're talking like in the last month, like landed 2 or 3 accounts. They go to the presentation and they're like, and so, by the way, we looked at some of your content, and here's some questions that we think that we could, here's some ways that we think we could improve your content. And here's why we think that, and here's the gap analysis. They presented it as if it's just straight up theirs. Like there's no RivalFlow branding whatsoever. There's like, look at all the work we did. It's literally like push the button, right? So great. So awesome. I love it. And so that's one case, people using it to like land customers. Then we have other customers where they've got the existing customer and they're just straight up expanding their line of business. And I swear to you, like they used to charge $1,000 to update a piece of content, and there's like a whole bunch of customers that they couldn't land. So now I don't know exactly what they're charging, right? But I know what they're paying. And there's a lot of margin, and they're straight up leveraging directly these writing projects you know, to deliver that $1,000 project, probably at 1/10 or 1/5 the cost. Probably. I don't have, I should ask, but I'm kind of like, I feel weird being like, oh, exactly what do you charge? Because I don't know. But like they're stoked because they've just like gotten like honestly like 50 of these projects, right? 50 projects for a single client per month, it's a big deal. Like you're talking like at the margin, it's been a tough year for agencies. Like last year was a bad year. And so to drive net new business, new stuff that they couldn't offer because the unit economics wouldn't work, and where we're now just like driving that down, leveraging AI, where they've been kind of like suffering quite a bit from like sort of like the content creation side. Now we've got this update cycle that we've built is really freaking great. I mean, it makes me super happy because I love all these people, right? Like
Yeah.
some of the people are like friends or have been friends, and like it's so cool to be able to help out with sort of like that redemption story, or like helping them to like be like AI ready, or have an AI story to tell. And frankly, it's an AI story to tell that like customers are like, don't feel like they can approach themselves, like it's a problem that they're running into. Hey, I generated a shitload of AI content and now I have 500 pieces of content. Um, can you help me with that? Or, like how do we organize? How do we like double down on these things? Um, okay, so that's two, right? So two cases. One case where they're landing new customers, another one where they're expanding a line of business, and then of course there's like dozens of these calls that I've been on where, oh yeah, here's another one. Great use case. This customer isn't like in the straight up business of being like, they're not, their core business isn't like SEO or content creation or whatever, right? They do like hosting, like design and hosting, and they have like a whole bunch of sort of light or general marketing services they provide, but like the core is, hey, we built this website for you, built some maybe marketing automation around it or whatever. And now they're like, hey, we can do content updates for you as well, right? So that's another way where a non SEO agency or like a design firm is now basically able to provide SEO services because you don't have to know SEO in order to leverage RivalFlow. And so that's a pattern that I've seen. Like we're empowering agencies that aren't actually SEO agencies to add on SEO services without having to add on SEO talent.
Mhm.
That's really interesting to me. Like we're basically like almost like a virtual employee in a weird way, like
Mhm.
really high as a product maker. That's like I feel like we're high on the competency level then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I really think that that's been a lot of the sentiment with people is it's not, it's not that AI kills SEO or content creators or anything like that. It's the people that don't know how to leverage AI. And what I feel like our position is that we want to be, even if you are scared of AI, even if any number of things or don't want to touch it, it's like, no, we can just be your tool.
Yeah.
You can just put us in your tool belt, no matter your experience. We boiled it down to some clicks. That wasn't really in question form, but do you want to articulate that in your way?
Man,
Um,
like I'm stealing somebody else's line on this or whatever. But I've heard it a lot, and it resonates super well with me at this point. Like AI is not going to steal your job, but a person that's using AI is going to steal your job, right? Like that's the facts, right? Like this, like we're not digging with shovels anymore. We're digging with we're digging with like backhoes and stuff, right? Like that's what this is. This is a force multiplier. Like you can do more, right? You can do 10x the work or 5x the work or whatever, right? And RivalFlow is a tool that's focused on a specific area of that, right? Improving existing content, right? And we make that really easy and streamlined. But everything, if you haven't had a deep conversation with ChatGPT at this point, and you're still in this place where you've asked it a basic question and then you're like, it's kind of like a middle schooler response.
Yeah.
Like, I'm smarter than this. Here's a hot tip, right? Here's how the thing works, right? I'll explain to you how it works, like whatever. It's basically like Google, it's like Google search, it's Google Suggest, right? That's how it works, right? Like you start typing and it starts completing it, but it'll do that to like 4,000 characters. So think about it like this, right? Like I'm going to start typing in what is the next, right? So what's it gonna say if I type in what is the next? What's it gonna say? What's the predicted thing? So if I say what is the next best way to eat a hard boiled, right? So, right? Like you can start to predict what my most likely next word is, right? If I am 2,000 words into that sentence or that question, you're going to get really good at predicting the next word. So that's context, right? So if you have a question for ChatGPT or Google or whatever, the key is to give it context. Let's rewind. Remember how I was talking about GA4?
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you an example. What if I were to say, how do I move my data from GA4 to mixed panel? It might give me an 8th grade answer, right? Here's what you do. You say, what do you know about moving? This is what you say to ChatGPT. What do you know about moving GA4 data to mixed panel? It'll print you a 2,000 word response or a 1,000 word response. Now you've got context, right? Now you ask a follow-up question, right? It's like the first response that it gives you is like based on that small amount of context that you've given it, and it winds up being an average response for the internet. It's an average like 8th grader response, whatever response. Not great. But now you've got 1,000, 1,500 words of context to build from. So when you ask it your follow-up question, it gets smarter. It just knows how to predict the next words better. You know what I mean? So this is the trick. If you don't want to get a bad response, you ask a basic question about the topic so that it builds its own context. And then you start asking follow-up questions. That's my hot tip. Like that, for some reason, I think people will ask it a question and not get a good response. And then be like, it's stupid. But no, you got to ask the follow-up questions, man. And then deeper you go, the smarter it gets. I swear to God, it is so good when you get like 5 questions deep. It's like, there is nothing better. This is really good. And then you have it check itself and be like, so people in like developers, right, will be like, oh, build me a website that does all the things. That's not how you do it. You got to break these tasks down, right? So you don't tell it to build you a website that does all the things. I want something that does like what Kayak does. Can you make that for me? That's the worst possible thing that you could ever tell it. It'll do something and it'll do it very poorly, very averagely. It'll give you some stupid code, right? What you do is you say, okay, I'm going to break this thing down and figure out how to build this thing. And then I'm going to ask it for these pieces. Each piece I then test, and then I give it feedback and like have it continue to build it. So you just got to break it down for it. You can also have it break it down for you and then plug those things back in. That's, so, breaking tasks down, developing context. If you kind of like get those things and really like don't understand it, but like be it, like ingest that into your soul, then you are a freaking cyborg. Like you are now piloting the digger,
Yeah.
You feel me? Like it's like there's really only two kind of things that you got to figure out: breaking things down and context. Bigot into your brain. Bigot, what's that even mean?
Get into
You dig the universe in.
So with RivalFlow, like you have clearly thought about this a lot. Are some of these like best practices and hot tips baked into the software? So people who are brand new and don't want to go through all of that and don't want to big it into their brain,
No.
are they set?
Yeah, man, like that's the thing, is that like we do all that stuff and make it so that you don't have to know anything, right? Like
Yeah.
and like you can give it to a VA and they can paste it into client sites, or you can literally be like a local business and give it to your receptionist, and your receptionist will actually be able to execute. Like it's straight up real simple. We make it as easy as possible so that and it's not so much because like the thing is that the world will catch up. Everybody at some point will know how to like deeply interact with GPT. Like it becomes, it's like we all know how to Google now. Like it used to be, by the way, a particular skill, knowing how to Google. We talk about it, and like engineers would be like, I'm good at Googling. And like, you'd be like, I am good at Googling. I know how to use the search parameters and so on. You're probably old enough to remember a time before everybody knew inherently how to Google. We're there again, that's where we're at, just like at a different place where if you understand it well, then, you have an advantage, a real advantage. I have like some weird skills and powers with data, like powers. Yeah, but like if I could cast a spell or roll a d20 or whatever, like my mage class has like data or whatever. Just like that's my thing. So I try to tie them all together and kind of understand how to like marry structured data with definitely unstructured data, and make it all work together. And that's kind of where I make magic happen. We do, but like in particular, I'm pretty good at it. So that's but yeah, you guys not everybody doesn't need to know how to like, interface with data and like ChatGPT and all that stuff, but we do that for you.
And that's kind of the next, that's a great lead into the next question. Like, do you recommend just using AI generated content, or do you think that there needs to be a human being, a real person involved?
I think that what you should do is take baby steps, right? Like whatever you're comfortable with. Like I'll tell you this, that when we first started, we did not just use the AI generated outputs. I think that we are now comfortable using mostly the AI generated outputs. I know that many of our customers just use the AI generated outputs, and they are very successful doing that. But there's a patent for RivalFlow, and the patent, you know, like, and so like as a nerd, the part that I'm most proud of is being able to find these gaps and express these gaps as questions and identify the thoroughness like difference. That is actually innovation and patentable. And in my, remember, web data extraction, my narrow view of the whole thing is that the greatest value is in figuring out why Google thinks that your page. I've got this Google thing on my desk, and every time I say Google, right, it's like that's Google Frame or whatever.
Yeah.
Every time I see it just like start like I'm like, it's gonna interrupt me. I know it's going to. It's like, you know, like anyway.
Listening. Yeah.
Yeah, it's listening. Google's listening all the time. The sorry, where was I there? Oh Christ, I had like this really great thread. What was what was I saying?
Well, we were talking about if there needs to be a person involved, and just how the evolution of kind of RivalFlow's data and our comfort level.
Yeah, right. So from my perspective, like the biggest advantage or the biggest innovation or whatever is that gap analysis. Why does Google think that my page, that's where it started doing the thing. Why does Google think that that their page is better than my page? What are the questions that they're answering that I'm not? That to me is where the greatest amount of effort was and the most value in the long run. Definitely the AI that we're generating will be fantastic. It's good already, but it's going to be like this next phase, like the next things that I'm personally focused on. The research is making that stuff better than what you can write yourself. No offense, but it's going to be good. You're going to love it. It's going to be like, it's going to be really in your voice, but better than your voice in a weird way. It'll be good. I mean, I don't want to say better, but like, you know, you can get humorous and analogies and all kinds of things that you feel like are part of you, but like we'll pull that out of your content and sort of emphasize the good characteristics, you know, and de-emphasize the sort of any amount of like, yeah, you know, like I was noticing like you guys may be trained to notice this now too. There was a customer that I saw, you know, like we got some customer feedback and it comes into like our Slack, and like I thought it was funny because the person used the word firstly and then the word secondly, and I was like, this is definitely not a real person.
Yeah.
I'm now trained to, you know, I looked at so much AI generated content or whatever that I'm like, if you're using the word firstly and the word secondly, like might as well, you know, because like anyway, like it's an inside joke or whatever. Hope maybe you've seen it, but there's some like AI will sometimes use like fourthly and fifthly, and I'm like, dude, what? Make a bulleted list. Like, what are you doing? Like, it's so cute. Sometimes it reminds me of like Johnny Five Alive, and it's the mistakes that it makes are actually kind of adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wouldn't say that about like Siri or Alexa or Google. Like the GPT stuff is it's good. Like they're fine errors. They're fine bugs. They're it's like if you had like a puppy that you were teaching to talk, it's pretty great. You know, like I like it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and it's interesting because it does feel like we're becoming more aware of like the uncanny valley of text now. Like we're becoming, I think as a whole, we're becoming more aware of, hey, this is AI or this is, and even like bad movies come out and we're like, okay, AI just wrote that. So now it's almost a joke, even if it wasn't AI, we just reference it as bad writing. Like this is just not how humans talk, but it sounds like we're like at RivalFlow and in the world of AI. I mean, it's increasing intelligence and everything. Do you think that we're ever going to get to a point with RivalFlow specifically where you can just connect it to your CMS and let it go and let it run?
Yeah. The I think that you'd always want an approval process, and I think that we could get there, right? But we're ultimately want to align our interests with what our customers are using it for, right? So it may be the case that that's what you become comfortable with. But I haven't heard that. I've heard that occasionally, pretty rarely. What I hear more often is like, I would like to just be able to like track and see the results, you know, more clearly. Like, frankly, you know, I'm sure that everybody listening or watching understands how to use Google Search Console really, really, really well. But what I've found is that 5 or 10% of people actually know how to use it really well. well enough to produce the kind of like pretty straightforward pages that we produce. So we want to basically make it so that you can see that instantaneous lift, so that you can report it to your customers, so that you can report it, so that you can build confidence in it. And to me, that's the first next step, right? Well, yeah. So it's like, before we try to like connect to and auto publish and stuff like that, I want you to have faith and confidence and understanding of what's actually happening.
Makes sense.
And you know, you want to be able to show it to your customers. If you're an agency, being able to do that, here's what was changed, here's the before, here's the after, and here's what happened. Crystal clean, which isn't really a thing, but it is now.
Well, so that I mean, we fortunately have a video on how to use Google Search Console specifically for RivalFlow.
Yes.
So that's good.
Yep.
But we're still getting the question like, how do I know if it worked? You know, do you show me? Where do you want to talk about the analytics aspect and
what would you like me to talk about? Like like what's coming soon?
Well, what exists now? What's the best way right now to show a client or even yourself? Like if you're doing this for your own self, or if you're an agency showing this to a client, or you're wanting to bring a new client on, right now, what's the best way of going about that? And what's the future? What's the future looking like?
Yeah, so like if you have access to the Google Search Console, that's like the way to get instant results, right? So if you have that access, that's the appropriate way. I'll give a shout out to Ahrefs. Ahrefs is like probably the second best way of doing it, because they're sort of indexing things pretty fast. And Patrick, there's a Patrick at Ahrefs, okay, and he was involved in actually doing this release of like actually one of my favorite product that that company has ever built is and like I think a reasonably good resource for the entire world. It's basically like a Wayback Machine, but like updated like daily, you know? So you can kind of, and it has like the JavaScript and the source code, so you can actually see what changes happened on a page. So you can be like, what were the differences between here and here? You know, so they have a pretty good like triangulation point in terms of like what happened before and after. You could obviously also use the free resource if you want to see what happened before and after. Like sometimes that's important to know. Like, we made this change, and we think that we made the change that's in that RivalFlow recommended, but let's make sure that that's actually the change that happened. And so that's a useful element. But really, it's Google Search Console is the way, right? It's free, it's glorious. You should use it. If you somehow don't have access to your client's site, because if you have access to your site, you have Google Search Console. If you don't have access to their Search Console, which is sometimes a problem, then Ahrefs has got you. It's probably the best source.
I've seen that tool. It is really impressive. I was like, holy shit.
You've seen the before and after?
Yeah, because he was looking at he tried to find it in the Wayback Machine, but
Yeah.
they didn't set the check mark. And
Yeah.
he's like, so I just went to Ahrefs and here it is. And I think that was a good example of like if you have a stingy client or someone that wants more detail and doesn't just want to see the graph go up, it's like, well, what did you do?
Yeah.
Um, that could, yeah, that's
Yeah, so yeah, I was talking to Patrick Stocks at PubCon, and I was like, hey, dude, I like really, I want you to know that there's this tool that you guys made that I think is really great. I actually bought a Ahrefs account just for that tool, and it turns out that that tool was his idea, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. It's like I didn't know. He was like I always knew he was like an evangelist for Ahrefs, but I didn't really know that he contributed to the product side. So that was, shout out to him, and like I think it's pretty cool. I like what they did.
that's great. Only at trade shows, right? You get to like shake the hands of the people that
It
inspire.
wasn't even, it was at the bar, right? Like that's how it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, we were definitely not like at the trade show, like just hanging out. Like after, it was the bar. Shout out to PubCon too, y'all. Maybe it's back, right? Like hopefully
That'd be fun.
that like last Las Vegas one was pretty good. I had a good time, and it felt like a reunion of sorts.
Mm.
I really hope that the PubCon um, scale returns. They used to have like 4,000 people. COVID knocked them down to a couple hundred, and there it seems to me that they're growing back. Maybe there's like 500 people there or something. All OGs. It was actually a really dense group of hardcore hardcore folks,
Oh, that's a lot of fun. I love
including
to
I
hear
guess
that.
me.
Yeah. Um, well, Mike, we have a bunch of, I mean, we still have a lot of questions on this list, but we've been going for almost 2 hours. There was something that I wanted to talk with you about, which was an idea that I had. And I want to get that out because it's kind of like a lunchroom table type of thing. But a thought that
Do
I've
you
been
want me to
having.
respond with my camera persona, or do you want me to respond like as just like, shall I
Oh
like?
shit. I don't know. Well, whatever
We'll see
tickles
whatever
your
happens.
fancy, because I don't know if I'm right on this. This is the thing, is we're it's I've been struggling with what a lot of us have been struggling with, especially after the golden hour uh convention that we went to. Everyone's talking about innovation. Everyone's talking about, I think it was called Golden Hour, the SEO conference that was online, and it was like 4 hours long. It was great. It was a lot of good stuff, but a lot of it was you need to innovate. You need to step out from the pack, and it's all the exact same things that you're talking about. Google wants right answers. They want quick answers. They don't want wrong answers. At the same time, AI is here and it's here to stay. And so we're all here like, hey, you have to learn how to embrace this.
Mhm.
And so I had a thought, and I would love, because it's those almost seem like opposing things, right? And RivalFlow seems like the antithesis of everything that we heard at this conference. And that was kind of a struggle that we had in the marketing team, was like, how do we even approach this? And so one thing that I thought of, and I've wrote it in Notion and everything, was to innovate net new, generate old. So for that lift, it's like you already have your personal ideas and your spirit and all of that hard research you did. You already did that last year, 5 years ago.
Mhm.
That is the beauty, you already gave it. What's happening is just the sands of time is wearing it down a bit. You can use AI to generate that, and then you can double down on the good stuff and innovate with that. But if you're talking about net new stuff that you want to add to new questions and new insights that you want to add to the industry, you can spend your human time on that. What we're suggesting is to lift all ships here, generate the old stuff, and innovate your net new stuff. I
Well,
also like it because it's catchy as fuck. But I feel like, am I on the right track with that?
when does something become old?
when it stops drawing, when it, for me, it's when it, and this is my SpyFu bias, and RivalFlow bias, when it starts dropping in the ranks, when you feel bad for it and you kind of want to forget about it because you cared about it at one time, but now it's dead and you don't know what to do.
Certainly that content you could you know, like that's like worth a content refresh, you know, like obviously that's a completely reasonable time to do that. But I do think that perspective and opinion, right? We talk about opinionated stuff and advice and actions and hot takes, if you will. That stuff, that core, that kernel of a piece of content, that stuff that's like your unique brain thinking stuff, right? That belongs in your net new, right? That's like the seed of it all, right? It's the kernel. And then you publish it, and then but you don't know what you're missing, you know, like straight up. I'm talking about, like, if we took like one segment of what I was talking about here, regs, and how Google's just becoming a big one.
Mm-hmm.
What I said lacks a lot of context, a lot of surrounding pieces of information, right? Filling in those gaps, right, of my curse of knowledge, right? Because I know things. Everybody that, or I think I do, or whatever. You decide whether or not I know anything. That's your choice, right? Like, I don't, I'm not gonna be that guy, okay? Like, I know that there's plenty of things that I don't know, right? But like the context of the difference between what I should have said, you know, and what I did say in order to bring you along the whole story is what the AI can certainly help with, especially if something like that, a segment like that, or a piece of content like that starts to rank. You'd want to fill in the gaps around it so that a person gets all their questions answered when they go to the page, you know, when they go to the piece of content.
So is that an option with RivalFlow? Let's say I'm creating a piece of content, creating a net new piece of content with all of my passion and fervor and everything. But because of that, there's context left out. There's, general. So could I publish that, let it stew for a few days, and then use RivalFlow to like fill in those gaps? Like
that is the way that it's used.
Oh, all right. So those are some
that is the way that it should be used. Yes, I think that is the right way. So my thesis is produce your content, your net new content. I think you can also use AI to help you generate that. Publish it, publish a lot of it. See what sticks. 6 days later, right? 10 days later, 2 weeks later, whatever you want, but you'll start ranking 6 days later. You'll lift it. That's how, well, okay, actually, new content, I'm talking about RivalFlow. New content, it depends, it depends on how much authority you have. And like, there's a variety of reasons why you may not reach your max, that's the problem with new content, is that it's not established, and so you don't know where it's going to land and level out, potentially for a little bit of time, improving an existing piece of content, we know that you'll get that lift within 10 days, right? That's why we make a guarantee. With new content, it might take 3 months in order for you to get to like your final place. So your cadence depends a bit on like when those things level out. But in any case, that's the right answer is publish your content and improve it. Publish your content using your unique insights, your opinion, your take, your research, but then let RivalFlow find the gaps. You focus on getting the best parts of what you have to say out, and then we'll help you to improve it from the perspective of people that need additional context and Google and all that stuff.
And I mean, I'm the video guy here. So would
Mhm.
that be another, like, if you're talking about alternative content that isn't necessarily written, would that be a good way to like vet it? You know, publish a piece of written content out there, see what sticks, rival flow it, or you know, if we want to make that into a verb, and then get the improvements and then put it on. I was going to say put it on tape, but like, and then create like a video content or a more robust piece of content. Do you think that that's a viable strategy?
Yeah, so the video thing is interesting, but we've got these, and I think that there's like you know you got like Descript and stuff like that, and that's why I think that Descript can like it doesn't quite generate your face,
No, it does.
but it can generate your voice, and so you can actually edit existing content. Um, my understanding is you can edit existing content uh, with text without having to re-record. Um, so you know you can certainly do that, but I don't have like a perfect workflow for.
Mhm.
I don't have a. I'm not going to tell you that I have a perfect workflow for video as it relates to RivalFlow. But there's possibly an analog there, right? Like, why not take your video and push it through a workflow that generates like a blog article and leverage that blog article to find the gaps and then like and then and then what you learn from that you could essentially re put back into your video, whether or not that's editing the video or adding a sub, you know, sort of a follow-up chapter.
Mhm.
I think that it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. Well, I do. I mean, I kind of think that it makes a difference from a video perspective, but it may not make a huge amount of difference from a ranking of the video perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you'll probably get similar results by adding like kind of the like an answering the additional questions like at the end or something. Probably would work pretty well. Not as well as a fully re-recorded, re-infused, or maybe even descripted, but I feel like that's a workflow that could be beneficial.
Nice.
I mean, do you have like tell me, can you take like a YouTube video and paste take the script and then generate a blog article from it? Like, do you have a workflow for that?
I don't have a workflow for that. I mean, what me personally, but you can absolutely do that. I mean, with transcription software like Descript right now, and there's a bunch of them out there.
Mhm.
I also I signed up for a caption thing, and they do a fantastic job of transcribing. You know,
Yeah,
Wistia what has been transcribing for ages.
but you
Uh,
just want to take that and like repurpose that exact transcript, but format it as a
Blog.
as an article, right?
Mhm.
And then you put your video in the middle of it
Yeah,
or at the top of it or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
it
You
used to be
can.
that we would just do transcripts, but I think now you can just kind of like take it and reformat it as a blog article. But I don't know what the tool to use is. You should put that in the
Yeah, get the work.
find like three tools that do that and add it to the end here because I think that they exist. I just don't know what the best tool is personally, but I would love to recommend it because I think that that can work well with us. Like we should basically recommend a few tools to take videos and transcribe them, make them into blog articles because what you're talking about here is a way to like realistically leverage video content and do kind of the RivalFlow thing with it, like because RivalFlow would fit into that workflow.
Mhm.
So all we need is maybe we'll build it, you know. But like I think there probably are tools.
Yeah, I mean, like Copy AI, we use that just to take a blog post and make a video of it. So doing it in reverse doesn't, you know, that doesn't seem Like it's a much different process, but
Yeah,
I'll
you're taking the blog post and making a script, a
script.
video script. Yeah. So the other way,
The other way. It's gotta work, and it's probably really easy. But
I
yeah,
frankly think that I think that maybe the tool to do it with is probably a prompt that you can paste into ChatGPT. I
yep.
think let's try that, dude. Let's take like the like a video transcript and um like take a video transcript, paste it into ChatGPT, give it a prompt, and make a video about that. Like that's a piece of content for you. And
Oh, I fucking love that. I'm excited to do that.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that would be really exciting. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that. So, well, this has been great. We're hitting 2 hours, and how you feeling, Mike?
Let's keep going, dude.
Let's keep
Ask
going.
all
Okay.
the questions. I have no reason to quit.
I got no quitting me. Well, that's great. Well, what I want to do now, and I'm actually gonna pause this and run to the bathroom. But what I would like to do is answer some like specific questions, like is this good for small sites? What is the guarantee? What's the cancellation policy? Because honestly, that's probably what most people are asking, and it's probably good to like just
Yeah,
knock.
let's do it. I'm gonna do 500 push-ups while you go to the bathroom.
Hmm. Well, that gives me some time, I think.
Surprise. No, I don't know.
All right. Yeah, I'm just gonna
Pause it.
Zoom record. Um, so they're on.
I did do 60 push-ups.
Whoa, that's a lot. That's a lot of push-ups in that time. I don't know if I can still do 60 push-ups in a row. My back starts exploding when I do that.
I I haven't done very many push-ups lately because whenever I do push-ups, whenever I do anything, I just get muscle soreness and it's annoying. So like anything that I like don't do very often, I'm like I have some um like squats, dude.
Yeah.
Running my legs for like honestly like 10 days.
Oh,
Like I'm
dang.
just like fuck. This is so fucking painful. Oh, actually, you know what? Party. I didn't have any pain. I had just had muscle soreness. Oh, from riding that fucking bull. Like just like the insides of
Taco.
my legs. I was
Yeah.
like that was like this muscle soreness that like lasted for fucking 10 days. 10 days I had muscle soreness. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, that's why I didn't ride that taco, because I knew I was gonna be hurting.
Yeah.
Whenever I've ridden the bull, like the insides of your legs just hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You don't use those muscles very often.
Mm-mm. No, do you take BCAAs ever?
No. I don't know what those are.
Oh, branched chain amino acids.
Hmm.
It does work to
Okay.
prevent muscle soreness. It does work. But I always forget to take it, right? It's like you have to do it before and after. And like the only time I ever remember to do it is like on a snowboarding trip
Mm.
and they work like a champ, but I don't like remember to like do it before I fucking ride a fucking taco. Like I
Like, oh,
should. Uh, but I don't remember.
let's get through some of these um some
Are there any other ones where you want to get another take or do it again or just ask it? I mean, to some extent, I've covered the same topic a few times, so
yeah, I mean, honestly, the responses you've given are solid. But I'm not even sure what we have. I think what we have is good. Uh, and if we decide at a later date that it's not, then we can figure it out. But I do really like this format. I mean, this is pretty slick. And
Easy.
again, it is a good knowledge
As
dump
it
for
could
me.
possibly be. I could do this fucking all day long. If it's
Hey,
useful for you, I can do it. Not like all day long, I mean, obviously, but this is cake. Hopefully it works out to be like an efficient process for you to one way or another get stuff out.
yeah, and I mean with like the transcription and shoot with AI in general, it's going to be super easy to just like break this apart
Hmm.
into good viable content, whether it's video, and I think a lot of it is going to be,
Hmm.
uh, or even just inspiration, but also just a good reminder for me on, how all this works and different uses of it.
Yeah.
It's exciting stuff. Okay. So I definitely want to get I want to get through some of this. Um so what is the rival flow guarantee? What do we got? What is the money back guarantee? We talk a lot about it. We have it for SpyFu. That's always been part of us. What is it for rival flow?
Okay, so the RivalFlow guarantee is we also internally call it trees magical guarantee or whatever, right? Like it's the 10 days or your money back or something like that, right? Or whatever we say, like it's guaranteed to improve your ranks in 10 days. So that's a true guarantee, But technically you have a 14-day free trial and you have a 30-day money back guarantee. So the 10 days is mostly setting your expectations. It's mostly rhetorical, right? We're basically just saying, if you do the RivalFlow recommendations, you'll see your rankings jump in 10 days guaranteed. We think it'll be 6 days, actually. And we give you a 14-day free trial because it's about like that's like the long end of when you would be able to like learn how to use RivalFlow, do some things with it, and you'll definitely get some results by 14 days. We're very confident you'll get results in 14 days. We say 10 days. We guarantee 30 days. We're also not dicks. So if you come to us in 33 days and want your money back, we'll still give it to you. So it's like, what guarantees you want? Like you got like several phases. Also, you can try RivalFlow without even using a credit card. So Yahtzee.
Why do we do this, Mike? Why do we
Our North Star, Patrick, is to empower the little guy, right? We want to put everybody in the position of being able to achieve their goals. And from my perspective, those goals are like making your business successful, bringing a product to market, doing the entrepreneurial grind, achieving success in SEO. That's like near and dear and deeply like connected to my heart and soul. The reason that I live, the reason that after relative success that I continue to go to work every day is to create value in people's lives. My personal belief is the meaning of life is to create as much value for people before you die, right? Like that's why I like want to be useful to the world. Like I want to like make things happen. So how do we do that? Well, like I want to make it so that if possible, you can get value even if you don't have money to give, right? We measure our success, like we measure our value that we create in the world in dollars, right? If I can make something, a piece of art, a song, a freaking pill, you know, whatever, like a microphone, a computer, if I make something and you're willing to give me some of your dollars for it, I can measure my worth in the world based on that, right? And we're not like counting ourselves in terms of lives saved. I hope that one day I'll make a business where I can measure like our output in lives saved, but we're measuring it in sort of like value created in your life, making your business better or making your life easier, right? And if you give us money for it, sweet. If you don't, hopefully we still created extraneous extraneous. Like there's like a gap between, like, hopefully we still created value in your life, right? That's like the goal. SpyFu, the only tool of its kind that has a free experience, a broadly free experience. We're the first, and we're still there. Do we make money doing that? No, we lose a little bit. But why? Because we're following that North Star for us of creating value in people's lives. Fundamental core value, deeply, deeply connected to every reason that I wake up and every reason that I exist, and the thing that I teach my kids, and the thing that I try to like make us all align for.
Yeah, that's it's always good to be. It's always funny at trade shows when people are, oh, you're SpyFu. Oh my God, I built my business off of you. You're the reason I succeeded. I'm sorry, I never paid though.
Yeah.
We get that all the time. It's like, I don't care. Oh, this is great.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, I do, you know, like want, like, I feel like if we cause people to give us their money, you know, like if we convince them to give us their money, that we'll use it to make more value. You know, that is what we do, right? Like, so like I'll hire more people, we do more things, spend more on data and analysis and machines. I mean, you guys don't know how much machines we have. It's crazy. The amount of data is like a few petabytes at this point, and data centers large, you know, but we can do more. So don't hesitate to give us money, but don't feel bad if you don't. It's why we exist.
So speaking of money, so the question right here, and we're getting this a lot from agencies and stuff, and I know we just updated this. So how much is it for like an additional client website? Do you wanna run through some cost numbers here?
I do. Okay. I do, because I'll just speak to like the immediate future, because like the current numbers are different. But here's the deal, is that on the current website, on the current SpyFu, on the current pricing page, it says contact us for, you know, agency pricing, which I don't really like. I don't like non-transparent pricing. I like transparent pricing. Frankly, the whole contact sales thing bothers me a little bit. Not that our salespeople are terrible. They're literally me and Jamie, you know, like I like get on the call, right? So it's not a bad thing. If you want to talk to me, just get on the sales line, right? It's all good. But the reason is that we wanted to understand what, like, basically what we're going to do is align with people's profit models. Like agencies, how are agencies going to use this product? You know, like how do they want to be charged? And when you figure out pricing, the worst way that you can do it, the stupidest way, is called cost plus pricing. Like you don't want to like say, here's what our costs are. Let's add something on top of it. That's dumb. That's like dumb. That's okay, fine. People do it, and I don't want to insult them, because it's kind of like almost how we like do like it's almost like how
Recon.
no, this is how like when like you're like when you're actually charging for time and labor, which is actually what agencies do. Oftentimes it's cost plus pricing, but really what you want to do is align with the with where somebody finds value. You align the pricing to where they find the value. So what we want to figure out is where that value is. So I've had like, oh, I don't know, 100 or so conversations with agencies to try to figure out what's the right pricing model. And we've moved around. We've moved from a couple different places, and ultimately I've been sort of seeking out this kind of unifying model that works well. And what I think works is, first of all, I want to be able to like get agencies in the door for not having to like have some kind of like hurdle, like oh, here you have to pay a lot, a huge, to get in the door so that we can properly service you, right? Like, I think that's like a little bit unnecessary. So what we're doing is, I'm still determining whether or not the agency price will be $149 with 5 websites to start, or $129 with 3 websites to start. I think it's going to be $129 with 3 websites to start. That comes with, and this is an important distinction, that comes with 100 writing projects, which is the gap analysis stuff that we do, the main deliverable, that can be shared across all of your clients, right? Then to add an additional client, it's like $10 a month. So you can get, bring on 20 clients. It costs you a total of $200, or it costs you $200. Sorry, it would cost you like $170 more. And then you would be able to service them. What I learned is that agencies want to service those clients in sort of bursts or sprints or whatever. Like, we're going to do all of your content updates and then do something else. And then we're going to do the same thing for other clients. Like, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. It's not like how typical SaaS works. Typically, you would charge a higher amount per client. But what we wanted to do is give agencies the flexibility to use varying amounts of writing projects. So sometimes you might use few, but you'd still want that reporting to stick around, and you'd still want that history and maybe those recommendations that you can use to make pitches, but then you only want to execute when you want to execute. So that's what I learned best aligns with them. And then of course there's sort of like the white labeling and all that stuff. So that's like not like we have to like build sort of a configurator, and we have to change the way that like the product works a little bit in order to have that sort of functionality. But as soon as we get that out, that is going to be 100% self-serve. In the meantime, in the short term, we offer that to anybody that we talk to. We would obviously offer that to anybody that sees the video. You could have the 129 or the 149 because they're literally the same price. It's just that there's like a 5 or 3, and it's just kind of like what's more easy to understand, and what fits people better. We'll probably wind up with the 129. I think it doesn't really make a huge amount of difference probably to almost anybody. There's not a lot of I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. I just obsess over the details of getting it as perfect as possible, but either one will be a pretty darn good alignment, and a lot more transparent than call for pricing. It's possible that we're wrong on that pricing, but I have a pretty high degree of confidence that a lot of people will have a good time with that.
That's excellent. Doesn't matter the size of the site or the clients, or would it just be $10 across the board?
$10 across the board. That's something we struggled with too. Is like, well, what if you have a smaller site versus a bigger site? And it's like, sometimes it's not really how they want to work anyway, and there's complexity to it. So anyway, you just get this block. You can add additional writing projects if you want. If you run into those limits, which you probably won't most of the time. If you don't have, more than 30 clients or whatever, you're pretty unlikely to run into that. And if you do run into it, then you just add on some additional writing projects, about $1 each. Maybe they'll be $1.25. But if you buy them in larger chunks, maybe you'll get them to $1. But anyway, just to think about it, it's like 100 more will probably cost you like $125 or something.
Yeah. Okay. How well does RivalFlow work for small sites, small websites?
It depends on how small, right? So like generally what we want to be looking at are first of all, a homepage only website will do nothing for, because we actually don't compare. I specifically have the opinion that your homepage isn't really something where you're predominantly optimizing for SEO, right? Because what you should be, in my view, optimizing some pages of your site for are like conversions and communication, crystal clear communication, you know, like on your homepage, you should have sort of like what you do and a call to action above the fold, right? Like,
Yeah.
am I going to optimize your you know, like statement of what you are, what you do, and your CTA? No. Could we optimize some things below the fold on a long scrolling site? Yes, but I really just don't want to get into that business of comparing your site to your homepage to somebody else's non-homepage or vice versa. I just don't think that that's a good comparison. And it's not really what I think that RivalFlow should be used for. And so that's a thing, right? Like there are some, you know, 3 million to 10 million websites in the world. There's a lot of websites, but there's a decent number of websites that are like homepage only. So it won't work on that. I kind of think that like 20 pages is like kind of a good starting point. Although we have customers, of course, with clients where they don't have very many pages that rank, and maybe it's fewer than 5. Can we make those pages rank higher? Yes. Is it worth $10? Absolutely. Would it be worth it to one of those people to like sign up for like $99? Possibly not, right? Like, because we're realistically going to have like 2 recommendations for them, and kind of like it kind of works well for agencies because maybe you're going to like create some more content for them, then maybe you want to optimize it for them. That's kind of work. But like to do content improvement on a site with like 5 pages total, I don't see it working a lot, right? I think you got to have a footprint. That's not to say that it doesn't work for like local businesses or businesses that are like that we kind of think as being smallish websites. It does work for those businesses. It works fantastically for you know, like it works really well for like my physical therapist. It works well for like a lawyer, you know, legal things. Finance, it works well for. It works well for these things where you have like deep content with opinions. Doesn't work great for like product pages again, or product listing pages. Why? Right? Why would we think that doesn't work well? Because those pages are optimized for you know, to convey what it is and for conversion, you know. So you can use RivalFlow there, but it's not it's going to require some wisdom, you know. It'll do the gap analysis between your product listing page and somebody else's, but if they're not selling the same product as you, the analysis is going to be jacked up, right?
Yeah.
So so the things where you can use RivalFlow and it's going to work out of the box and when it's going to work perfectly all the time are like, you know, just like your, you know, your editorial, you know, your articles on blogs, stuff like that. It works perfectly for all the time, every time. But e-commerce, product listing pages, lists of things, lists of products. It doesn't work well for like charity websites, right? Like I think I specifically list out like, you know, because like
yeah, I can see that.
like what's your charity do? What is the services it provides? What do you, how are we going to optimize those? And by the way, one of the like most unfortunate things, and you can ask me these questions directly if you want to, so that you have like a starting point, but like it doesn't work great for agency websites, right? Because they're an agency website. If you think of like, if you can understand why it doesn't work well for like a charity, because like basically, what do we do? Who do we service? Like that's what it's all about. Like donate here. All these things aren't going to be like the primary action isn't going to be about SEO. Primary action on most of those pages of those charity sites are all about what it is and what your call to action should be, and that's just not like really an SEO-able. It's not going to be good for like this sort of gap analysis. I look at the charity sites really early because like, wouldn't it be great to make a product and then just be able to give it away to like all the charities of the world? So I was like, this would be great. We're going to be able to like empower these guys to like do all the things. And of course, sadly, it doesn't work great for the charities. But one day maybe we'll figure out how to like make it work. Maybe a module of some kind to make it work for them somehow. I would like to be able to give a product away to all of the charitable organizations, just to kind of like magnify impact, value creation in the world, that type of thing.
So just to that was some great detailing, but let's I'm gonna try and preface it. So RivalFlow is great at certain things and for certain websites, and not as great for others, just like any product. Can you list off 3 things where it's going to work great, and 3 where it's not ideal for you?
It works well for almost every site, right? So if you've got like a good amount of written content, that's what we're looking for. Like it's almost like, let's just think if you've got content with 800 words to 3,000 words on a page. That's going to win. It's almost never going to lose, especially if that's like something where you're not specifically describing your product or service. So that like applies to like a good solid, like, I don't know, 60% of the internet or whatever, right? Places where it becomes challenging, starts to get challenging, right? Are like commerce sites where you're describing a product and you're primarily listing its attributes, right? If that's what that's all about, and that's what the comparison products are all about, I don't know how many ways I can tell you that those shoes come in black and green, right? Or that they have like sizes that are like that range from like 6.5 to 13.5. Like that is what it is. Like there's nothing you're gonna do to SEO that, right? That said, you could take some content below it and describe all the reasons why the thing is the best or whatever, and that sort of stuff kind of like winds up maybe ranking or whatever. But the reality is that for commerce sites and stuff like that, there may be a lot more going into why Amazon is outranking you, or why the primary manufacturer is outranking you, that have nothing to do with the content that's on your product listing page. Your product page. Then there's like the lists of products. Those are somewhat challenging as well, but you do find, and we had like this fantastic like trade show floor thing where we had like the guy's main competitor was Target, and Target.com, right? And he's literally like got just outranked. He's like 4th and they're 2nd, and it's like, this is such a good recommendation. You look on this page and it's like just this listing of like, I don't know, men's holiday ideas or some crap like that, right? Like, do you remember this?
Yeah.
Were you there? Whatever. Anyway, so there was like, so if and we're looking at it and we're like, why is it making these recommendations? And then you look, lo and behold, in the Target page, there's like this little bit of content, like, and it's like 3,000 words or whatever, but kind of like buried under this drop down thing, right? Like at the bottom of this listing, this like pre-made holiday gifts for men listing thing that's not like a real, it's not like this is the TV section or this is the, I don't know, underwear section or whatever of Target. It's like kind of a made for SEO top men's gifts things, right? So like when we compared his page to this page, it gave us fantastic insights. So sometimes those things can work really well, but you have to, but like in RivalFlow, you can say, okay, look, I've got a commerce site. Don't show me anything about product pages, but the listings pages, yes, that's fine. Or you can just be like, look, I've got a commerce site, but I've also got this whole other section of the website / blog. So you can filter and never get any recommendations for whole portions of the site, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually, sort of like the wisdom that's necessary, I guess, if you will, or like the knowledge of the product or the knowledge of the website. So it works, but it's not turnkey for commerce sites typically. All right, so that's like up. I feel like I should have like a whiteboard.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll go there someday.
The
So
whiteboard
that's like one, right? But that one like sort of works, and but there's so much value in potentially. I mean, what's a commerce site but like a money machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you can figure out how to make it work, money happens. Whereas you got like a blog, money doesn't directly happen, right? So we want to like help the commerce sites to be able to leverage RivalFlow, and that could be like a whole different thing because it's there, but sometimes out of the gate it doesn't work perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's an area where we can really expand on and probably get better, frankly, at explaining how to use the product for them. But what doesn't work? Okay. I'm going to say that the funniest thing that doesn't work well is agency sites, because agencies are a big part of our customer base, right? They come in, and the most common thing, like second most common thing, like I don't know, the most common mistake agencies make is they come in and they put in their own website, and it's a mistake from not necessarily their perspective, because it's like, why wouldn't I try out my own site?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why an agency site is just like not a great fit. And that's because agency websites generally are going to be talking about the products and services that they offer, and most of the time are relatively light on other things that are like real thought leadery. Sometimes agencies have like real thought leadery stuff in like their in their blog, but really commonly we see agencies come in and mostly what they're describing is their product or service. So optimizing that type of content, that's not really the purpose of the page, right? So even if you just look at like, okay, we offer SEO services, here's what they are. Communicating that clearly and then causing the customer to convert into a lead is the goal of the page, right? It's not really about SEO there. So the recommendations that we make, I feel like, I mean, while they sometimes fit, they're sometimes very branded and such, and they may not be like your particular vision, like we'll be comparing you against another agency, but
Yeah.
your differentiator, your value added differentiator is different, like the point is to convey your value added differentiator and create a call to action, basically a funnel for yourself. So it's like, I don't recommend using it there. And so that's an interesting way that agencies come in and immediately dead end and fail, because they get like these crappy recommendations. They're also usually not very deep, oftentimes not very deep sites, right? So it's better to put in a client. So that's like the funniest and most common, funny in a way that makes my heart hurt, my heart sink every time I see it, because I'm like, that's a good customer that is sadly, being underserviced, and we probably just need to reply. The app needs to basically be like, hey, you put in your agency site. Don't do that. But it's somewhat difficult to determine that on the fly, or edge casey. Let's see. Another one where it doesn't work is charities. And, kind of like going in, I always wanted to be able to like give like a product away. And so like one of the first things that I look at is like these charities that I like. And I plug them in, 'cause I plug in a bunch of things, right? I plug in like my doctor friend, my physical therapist for my knees. I plugged his in. We talk, and he's really into SEO. And then like my lawyer friend. These are people that are neighbors from the SpyFu office.
Mm-hmm.
And and everything works fantastically for these guys. And then I'm like, oh, I do a lot of donating. And so I like thought it would be cool to be able to like just send a copy of RivalFlow to all of the charities that I like, or all charities all the time. Sadly, they're kind of in the same boat as the agency, right? They basically need to be describing their product, the value added differentiator of what's the service that the charity is providing, like what is it actually doing, what's the call to action, that type of thing. What are the events that they're having, the specific events, that kind of stuff. That's just real specific. That's not really SEOable.
Yeah.
Doesn't work well for those, and so that's a bummer. But you want to like make value for people, I'll just have to donate some money to them. Don't get free software, you get actual dollars, I
You
guess.
get actual dollar. Well, and it sounds like a third one there, if I may say so, is someone is like a small site without a lot of content, but at the same time, what we mentioned before is that even if you're starting with content, you can use RivalFlow to improve it. Do you think that's a good idea to do like straight out the gate? Let's say you're a brand new website, you maybe have like 5 pieces of content out there. You find out about RivalFlow and you're like, you know what? I'm going to do this on the right foot. And so you write more content, you pump that into RivalFlow, and then you get those questions back. And so really, as you're developing your first pieces of content, you're also actively improving them using our software. Do you think that's a good method? Do you think that's a good approach?
Well, you can't just plug in like content into RivalFlow. Like you can't just paste in a page.
A custom compare.
You can use custom compare, but the page has to already rank.
There we go. Yeah, that's the rub.
So the page has to actually already be published. So like you can't just take like your Google Doc and plug it into RivalFlow. And I don't really think that is I'm not going to say that's not an area that we won't allow for, right? Like we'll probably do some content creation or help you find a gap, find gaps in your content. That seems logical. Out of the gate, what we want to focus on is improving existing content. So what I recommend is, that you use existing writing tools or analysis to just like put out your best idea, right? Publish your best idea. Figure out how to like, if you want to figure out how to automate it, like record yourself in your car on your way to work, right? Talking about something that you're passionate about or the topic that you want to do. Transcribe it and use this glorious method that you're going to have, right? To use ChatGPT to turn that thing into a blog post, right? And start with that, then improve.
Gotcha.
That's the way to use RivalFlow.
An interesting thing with RivalFlow, and something that I'm gaining much more of an appreciation for just because of the March update, and how Google has expressed, we want you to answer questions. RivalFlow from the get-go has been using the format of questions. Here are the questions that you missed. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question because like a lot of times people have the idea or the misconception that what you should do is paste the question and then the answer into your content, kind of like as an FAQ. That isn't the way that it's intended to be used. It's not the end of the world if you wind up doing that. You just like take these questions and paste them in the end of your content. I don't know. It's probably better than nothing. But the intent is to it's like a writer's prompt, right? It's so much easier, in my opinion, as a kind of basic person without like great writing skills. it's like, it's much easier for me to just answer a question than to be like, how about I, do some exposition on like some kind of random topic. Like, dude, look at what we're doing right here. You're asking me questions. I can talk about it for literally 3 hours. Meanwhile, if you're like, hey, Mike, can you just randomly talk about RivalFlow stuff on video or something? No, dude, it's so much easier for me to just answer the question that you ask. Way easier. Right? So that's my opinion. And that's how we built the product. The product is designed to prompt you with those questions so that you can answer them. And then you can evaluate whether or not the GPT is answering it in a way that you like. And if it's not, maybe we make some modifications to it in tandem. Maybe you modify it, maybe you just use it, maybe you throw it away, whatever. There's like this sample AI generated stuff that answers the question, but you can feel free to answer that with interpretive dance. Like the question is unanswered. Film yourself doing the not interpretive dance. We're not really going to go there, but you can just answer it yourself. That's a way. You can answer it yourself on video. You can answer it yourself, in written form. You can do it however you want.
And that really is, that's an aspect of RivalFlow. Obviously, it's great to get those AI generated, that AI generated feedback back, right? But just discovering the questions that you're missing is a huge thing. Do you want to articulate that a little bit more? Because I don't think we talk about that enough.
Oh, of course not, right? Yeah, like so basically what we're doing is we're trying to identify like the core thing of RivalFlow is we look at your competitor's website, we look at your competitor's page, and we look at your page. We use ChatGPT. ChatGPT reads it, reads your page, and then says what questions are they answering that you're not, and more importantly, which questions are they answering more thoroughly than you are. And then we say, okay, here's how they're answering it. Here's their answer, and here's your answer side by side. And then we say, here's how theirs is more thorough. Sometimes when you look at their answer side by side with your answer, you're like, I don't know, they look like the same. Even mine's even a little bit longer. But the software does the job of analyzing it and comparing these snippets and being like, actually, there's a little bit in here where they're giving more specific information, or like they're giving a step-by-step process and you're not, right? It'll tell you this in like sort of written form, and then we break that down into like these sub questions so that you can then just take and surgically insert the little bits that you're missing, right? And so like all of that is frankly, well, it's where the value is. It's identifying that gap, the questions, and then the sort of the nuanced differences between the things that you're answering, just not quite as completely as theirs, right? That little difference is kind of the key, right? Like it's the gap. And that's like it's kind of the hard part, that's the part where you can't, you could take an article and another article and be like, hey, ChatGPT, tell me the differences. You can do that. And you know what? You'll get results that look pretty good. Like you'll get pretty good results. Like you'll get results that look pretty good. If you keep doing it, you'll realize that those results aren't very good or those results aren't predictably good. So the hard part isn't saying, hey, ChatGPT, tell me the difference between these two things, because it'll tell you. The hard part is breaking it down into steps and making that whole process predictable. And that's like a different thing than having a conversation. That's like sort of a software engineering thing. I mean, it's software engineering for sure, but it's also, it's not just prompt engineering. It's like, taking that output and figuring out like what that's saying and kind of grading it and figuring out like a workflow. I'll tell you, when we do a page-to-page comparison in RivalFlow, it's like an 80 question answer long workflow that we do in ChatGPT. You know, it's a conversation that takes software like 2 or 3 minutes to do, right? It's like, you know, like, so if you were typing it, it would probably take you 15, 20 minutes to just follow our steps. It might take longer because we're doing it as fast as we can and multi-threaded, and, you know, it still takes minutes. So I don't know what I just said, but
Well, I mean,
a lot of things there.
yeah, I mean, it sounds, this might be a good transition, because, and maybe you already answered it, to be honest, but, you know, a big question that I think pops into a lot of people's brains when they hear about RivalFlow AI is, why can't I just, I got ChatGPT, it's right there. I got Llama 3. I've got all, you know, I've got all these AI things. Why don't I just, why don't I just do it? And could you answer that?
Yeah, I mean, you can do a certain portion of it, right? And it just comes down to like predictability and quality of output, and sort of like, you know, we're basically just, I mean, like I was just saying, it's not so much about just the prompt engineering and like the conversation that you have, but it's about taking those output, breaking the process down into like steps so that you can create the predictability. And then, but the problem is then you have to like use some software engineering to like take those outputs and turn them into new inputs, and basically have like this sort of fluid, you know, conversation, 80 prompt long conversation with ChatGPT in an automated way. That's really where the value is. That's like sort of like the patented portion of RivalFlow is kind of that process. There's some innovation there. It's not like the craziest thing that I've ever done, but it's cool. I mean, you know, in terms of like software, there's something like harder things that can be accomplished in the world, but it happens to be a piece of innovation that didn't exist prior to RivalFlow. Like RivalFlow is pure new innovation. Nobody's ever done it before.
Kind of like SpyFu.
Kind of like SpyFu, kind of like Nacho, like, dude, forget the curse.
Well, there's actually two questions that come of that, and I'm gonna ask the more basic one first, because the career path of prompter is starting to pop up more, and so which I find fascinating. And one of the things about that is, okay, maybe I don't want to do this in
Like the prompt
ChatGPT.
engineer you're talking about?
Yeah, like a prompt. Yeah, exactly. And I've seen that for like design studio. They're not hiring graphic artists, they're hiring prompters. Um, and so that is that is a thing that is beginning. And I don't know if I want you to put this in terms of RivalFlow, because obviously there's going to be a cost of a physical human being that is trained to do this versus a subscription. Do you have thoughts on that? I think maybe this if you want to granulate it to RivalFlow and specifically what we're doing, or if you want to make it a broader term in terms of that career path, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of that.
Okay, so in the long term or medium term or short term, like let's say not that long, prompt engineering is become software engineering. And to the extent that prompt engineering, so like real prompt engineering, the prompt engineering that I think about is like, okay, we got to like get the best out of the GPT in order to produce predictable outputs to build bigger and better systems. That's actually software engineering. And to any extent that it becomes more than that, I think that realistically it's moved to software engineering for the in the sort of like last year or so. But when we're talking about like using existing tools like ChatGPT or whatever to produce like a creative output, that's a bit of a different thing, isn't it? Like that's like you're not trying to like systematize it. you're just trying to get good things to come out of it. Um,
Huh.
like I would say in some sense that if you haven't used ChatGPT to generate like an image to mock somebody in your life,
Uh-huh.
you know, then you haven't like used it for the fun that it actually can produce yet, right? Like I I mildly think that like GIFs might be dead in the sense that like you can certainly create something that's really very specific and arguably, um, you know, let greeting cards might be dead in a sense, you know, like there's like a lot of innovation that can happen when you can really customize something to somebody's character or their caricature.
Mhm.
Um, have you done that?
I send Megan memes that I just build in Midjourney, you
Oh,
know.
cool. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
and
Yeah.
that's and she didn't even know that that's what I was doing.
Oh,
Uh,
she just thought you were a genius,
she
right?
thought I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
sending
yeah.
her memes about her cats with
Yes.
that cats that look exactly like her cat.
Mm,
So that is so much fun. And yeah, so
it
I also
is.
highly
Yeah.
recommend.
Have you seen the one that like so every time I go to the refrigerator, right? Like I'm just like, you know, sometimes I just like absentmindedly go to the refrigerator and I don't know, grab some raspberries or yogurt or something. And my
Yeah.
wife is smart and she sees me doing this and she says, like, you know, you're just thirsty every time. And she's right. I'm thirsty. I'm not actually hungry. I'm thirsty, but I'm going to the refrigerator to eat, which is
Mhm.
it's not a good loop. Um, and so I made this like, you know, instantaneous like thing that that was like some lady like fending off a bear, like saying you're just thirsty, right? And I mean like just like the ability to like create like a thing that I'll show you what I made. Maybe you'll put it in there. Maybe you can just edit it in here if we use this.
Oh, can't wait.
Have I'll just show it to you here though. Hold on. Woman confronts bear. So actually, the funny thing is that you know sometimes with ChatGPT, you just have to be real persistent. So here, can you see that? So
Oh,
this
yeah.
is like the first go round, right? So the bear says, and this becomes a joke in my household. You're it because it's not like you're just thirsty because what's happening is she says you're just, and the bear says tarsty, which is hilarious in a weird way because it's like, is it saying thirsty or tasty? And so anyway, now I'm just tarsty. But the interesting thing is that that's not actually what I was trying to get from ChatGPT, right? So I wound up having like just having it refine it and refine it and refine it, and then I wound up. It took a few tries to get to there where it's just like the bear's attacking and she's saying you're just thirsty. But it's
There we go.
interesting to me that the creative process there actually generated something that was in a way more funny, or at least funny in a different way than I was trying to be. Just, you know what I mean? Like that's not the expected. I like think I'm doing it like right, and I am, but in the end, the random thing that it came up with actually is the thing that stuck. And
Hmm.
to me, that's kind of interesting because I feel like I'm funny. But it just came up with
Yeah.
Farsi. I don't even like. I don't even know that like it's not even a word, or if it's a word, man, it was just a totally different take, you know. So here we are, humans being so, you know, like I'm just saying the thing can come up with can come up with its own humor that isn't that isn't that isn't bad. It's riffing with you. It really is a collaborative effort, you know,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
on random stuff.
That is
But
nice.
I will say that going back to your kind of original idea about prompting, I think that the way it used to be, you know, like because when you do prompt engineering, part of it is to conserve tokens, you know,
Hmm.
You don't think about that when you're using ChatGPT. You're just trying to get the best output. But when I'm trying to like build a system, I need to make it so that this thing costs, it's helpful to make it cost 17 cents versus 20 cents, right? Because if you're doing something that, you know, whatever, right? Like I certainly don't want it to cost fucking, I've gone a long ways without saying fucking. What is it, 3 hours in here?
Yeah, we're about three. Yeah, we're 3 hours.
I mean, I
Exactly.
know I'm conscious of the fact like I'm not like really try that hard anymore. I don't try, but like I said shit like an hour ago, and now I said fucking twice. That's a third one.
Well, we found the limit. There we go. We found.
Hey, listen, you know, it's there's probably like a few thousand words. You know, tell me how many words this thing is once you transcribe it, but it's a
Right.
decent number of words. Uh,
That's interesting. The cost and the tokens. Do you want to elaborate on that, because that's I think that's an important part, is that we're building a system. That's what it is. Um,
yeah, you have to build it cost advantaged. And so, you know, like part of what we have to do, what we do to bring a product like RivalFlow to you, to the customer, is that we do the thing in a way that that scales to cost. You know, if we had to pay, if we built the thing, if we engineered this thing, like we're going through hundreds of thousands of tokens in order to do one report, one gap analysis report. And if we did that in a way where it costs like $5 and we're only able, or you know, $20, $10, right? It's a thing to buy a pretty good article generated in GPT for $50, right? That's a
yeah.
thing. 5,000 word article, really well done, $50. Cool. What if when you get it, it's not what you wanted? You still paid $50. And there's no putting that cat back in that bag, really, you know? So those types of products, you really have to like have like a lot of control at each stage. When I think about net new content and generating really good stuff, I have a lot of ways to do it, like ragways and that type of thing. But when we're trying to generate it, it might cost too much, so that the margins don't work well with something like SaaS, something that people are going to want to consume, you know. So you have to think about all these things when you're bringing the product in, and cost engineering is one of those things. So to my understanding, my expectation, prompt engineering actually has quite a bit to do with cost engineering and optimizing the output based on the input, you know. So you want to get a good ratio of value on that stuff. And so, you know, you can do quite a bit with a you know, $129, you know, you service all your customers, all your clients for $129 with RivalFlow. You probably can't get that kind of value everywhere, you know, frankly. And yeah, that's something that we spend time on.
That's a distinct advantage, and I think that's good to hear you elaborate on it. That's fascinating. Um, so another distinct advantage that we have, and I don't want to go through this whole thing and not specifically talk about this, is our connection with SpyFu.com. Both in, I mean, in terms of why we launched, how, you know, our base, our code of ethics, our price is part of it. You know, watching you talk to Zach, and it wasn't Caleb, it was someone else, about you know, why we reduced the price of SpyFu in half to get double the customers. You know, the creation of value, but also, and I'll cut this part out, but also we got a lot of clout. We have a lot of fan base because we did create a lot of value for free for a shitload of people. I made it this whole time without swearing, so there we go. And so we don't leverage that as much as I think we should. We have a lot of street credit with SpyFu.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a question to formulate here, but maybe the question's this. As the founder of both SpyFu and now we've shifted, not entirely, but we've shifted some focus into RivalFlow. See, it's already a terrible question. What is your feelings about being the founder of SpyFu, being the founder of RivalFlow, how those two relate, both in a technical term, but also in terms of business ethics and your personal connection to these pieces of software and the audience that you're trying to communicate with? How are those aligned?
All right. So it's a lot to unpack, but let me start with like kind of like a question that I get. I'm gonna like restate your question a little bit, but like
Oh, no, thank you.
but like but you know how it'll work. I'll just like ramble. But here's the deal: is that is a question that I get kind of often is why didn't we just like bake RivalFlow into SpyFu, right? Why didn't we do that? You know, because we do that with a lot of stuff. If you think of like the beginning, the origin of SpyFu, we've added in tons of products that could actually stand completely alone, right? We've had like recon files, we've had like the backlink stuff, we've got like the tracking stuff. We've got like, you know, if you go back to like combat, but you got the keyword stuff, like a ton, ad history, ranking history, all these things actually, frankly, could be standalone in a lot of ways. Leads, Jesus, we've had a lot of things. Okay. At what point do you roll something out? So here's the deal: is that when you're trying to solve one like a brand is like a label that's associated with an idea. SpyFu is download your competitors' keywords and ads. You know, RivalFlow is improve existing content with AI. Different ideas can use different brands, right? Like that's useful. Like you're gonna like associate this thing with improve existing content with AI, and you're gonna use that thing that you're wearing or this thing back here.
Yeah.
It says I love dad or whatever, but like
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's so cute.
yeah. So the yeah, so like but and that's one reason. But the other reason is that SpyFu you want an all you can eat, right? An all you can eat thing, right? So you type in you want to be able to like research all of your competitors, do all the things, learn everything that you can about the market. The overall idea is to improve your stuff, launch something new, learn everything you can about your competitors, download all their stuff, do the stuff you need to do, right? RivalFlow has a very specific purpose, and it's centered around your website. SpyFu is centered around your competitors, really. Like it's kind of about like spying on your competitors and downloading their stuff. RivalFlow is focused on improving your website. It's different. Secondly, the model is a bit different, right? In RivalFlow, you would want to be able to invite all of your team and execute all of the, you know, on all of the recommendations that we give you. And the more people using it, the more value we're creating. On SpyFu, it's a research product. We really can't just be like, hey, invite all your team members, it's free. You know, like, because I'll tell you, the world consists of like these things called group buys, and like they just like, hey, one person buys it, I'm going to share it with everybody, which is really actually what we have. Group buys, if you guys don't know about these, we have had 25,000 users in a month from group buys using SpyFu, and it's like, what is going on? Well, one account, you know, it's like it's not great. So RivalFlow service is a different need, and it's a different brand. It's a different idea, and in a lot of ways, it's an idea that's a straight up evolution of what we're trying to accomplish with SpyFu, right? Like we're going to help you directly solve these problems. So my thought was that at some point we might be able to try to integrate it like into SpyFu. It's kind of like an upsell or whatever. But we should start with its make it its own thing. But the team at RivalFlow and the team at SpyFu overlap 100%. It is the same team. You work for RivalFlow and SpyFu, and I'm the CEO and founder of both companies. And everybody here is the same team that you've trusted and like, known and met, for the last 17 years or whatever, going back quite a ways. We have the same values, same ethics, same everything, same money back guarantees, same contact support, and we'll respond in 90 seconds. Everything's the same, just a different brand. And frankly, you can buy SpyFu, and then we'll be like, hey, if you try out RivalFlow, we'll give you a discount, like hop over here and we'll do this, we make it easy to connect the things, but it's just a different idea. What else can I say there? We serve similar customers, but not exactly the same, similar customers, but not exactly the same. In fact, RivalFlow can work for customers on two levels, right? In a way, it works almost better for agencies than SpyFu does, which is kind of weird because it also RivalFlow can work almost better for like a relatively unsophisticated, random business owner or somebody like, just that's doing like, like you don't have to know SEO. You don't have to be very interested in PPC. You just can be like, I have a website and I need to like make it go up. Right? Yeah. You don't have to know a lot. You just do. So it's weird because there's like this area in the middle where there's a lot of customers that are relatively sophisticated SpyFu users that want to dig into the data, but there's then these two edges where, obviously the agency people are quite sophisticated, but it also can serve an audience that just wants to have good things happen and engage in SEO, but not like at kind of like the keyword and search volume and like backlinks and ranking history level. Just give me the answers and tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's just kind of the next evolutionary step for people working in SEO, especially. Mm-hmm.
But we leverage, so like when you create when you create a new website and when you create a writing project, right? It takes a couple minutes, right? Mm-hmm. And what's going on in the back end, is it's going over and using all of that SpyFu data, that 15 years of history and like, 600 million SERPs, per month of data. And like it like straight up fires up like your process to come up with your recommendations on like an entire data center. Like it's running on like 200 machines all at once, your one thing. It's realistically like 2 days of compute that kind of gets compiled down into like 90 seconds. So it's like we're leveraging all of those, that sort of relatively vast SpyFu resources and data to deliver these actionable, straight up recommendations to you in pretty near real time.
Well,
kind of all the analysis that you would ever want to do on SpyFu, we just do it for you and package it in a thing called an action stream that you then just do.
I think that's kind of, I think near the end of SpyFu, that's really what we wanted to do. Interactive AdWords Advisor for
SpyFu,
just like let's take all of SpyFu and put it in a little bite-sized actionable chunk.
And RivalFlow is definitely a direct extension of like that evolution of thinking from giving you information to giving you insights to then giving you actions. And so now we're delivering actions, and it's just straight up taking all of that data. This is really what the products that are frankly SpyFu derivatives I don't know if you guys noticed, but everything looks like what our original thing is, right? It's like it's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, and it's all basically the same. RivalFlow is the next level, right? It's giving you the things you need to do without giving you all that noise that you don't need. Like the machines can solve all these problems and give you the right choices, and you just do them.
Yeah.
And it freaking works.
And it works. That's the whole thing, is that it works.
Yeah, it's glorious, dude. It's amazing.
Well, Mike, I think I'm gonna wrap.